It's the Smucker's Uncrustables podcast with your host, Uncrustables. Okay, today's guest is rough around the edges. Please welcome Crust.
Thanks for having me.
Today's topic, he's round with soft, pillowy bread.
Hey.
Filled with delicious PB&J.
Are you talking about yourself?
And you can take him anywhere.
Why'd you invite?
And we are out of time.
Are you really cutting me off?
Uncrustables are the best part of the sandwich. Sorry, Crust.
The new McCrispy Strip is here. Dip approved by ketchup, tangy barbecue, honey mustard, Sprite, McFlurry, Big Mac sauce, double dipped in buffalo and ranch, more ranch, and creamy chili McCrispy Strip Dip. Now at McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Back so soon? Oh no, what happened?
A little incident at the dog park. We gotta head to the vet.
Oh, not again. These bills.
We can use CashNet USA. We can apply in minutes, get a fast decision, and have the money in the account as soon as the same business day. All right, Cheddar, back in the car.
When you need money fast, be the hero. All loans subject to lender approval. Speed of funding is subject to verifications and your bank's processing times. See CashNetUSA.com for more details.
Hey, warm up, lovely low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the Beeson Family Podcast. We've got a great podcast for you. Joining me in segment number 2, Blake Lovell, who does such tremendous work over at Southeastern 14, is going to be aboard. We're going to be chatting with him about everything that we've been seeing in the SEC. Coupled with that, we've got to get a little bit of a look at the national landscape. We've got some very big games that are going to be happening on this Wednesday in the SEC, including the reincarnation of the Iron Bowl out there on the hardwood. So we're going to be chatting about that and so much more with Blake in segment number 2. In the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday as we hit some bank shots. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, whatever you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we have fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GNet_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM, naming does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other way, that's fine, an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And from there, you're able to fire on whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Now, because the Greg Peterson experience is from midnight to 3 Eastern Time, that'd be 9 to midnight Pacific, do have to record this a little bit in advance, so some of these late Tuesday games are still raging on as I do this podcast, but we've got a lot in the books already, so let's take a look back at everything that we did see on this college basketball Tuesday, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Barring something unforeseen, New Mexico is going to continue to be a bulldozer. New Mexico entered into the night 15-6 against the spread. There's 9 minutes and change remaining. They're currently up on Wyoming 72-49. They were laying 10.5 in this game for New Mexico. They've just done such a good job of being able to play bully ball. Right now, they're up 43-25 in terms of the battle on the glass. JT Toppin, Nelly Jr., Joseph, both of these guys are going to go off for 10-plus rebounds when this thing is all said and done for Wyoming. They've only went 4 of 19 from three-point range as well. I keep saying it. We keep on harping upon how good this New Mexico offense is. How about the defense and what they've been able to do? As that has been quite remarkable. It's going to be nip and tuck for Minnesota. It was the best cover 8 team in all of college basketball entering into Tuesday at 18-3 against the spread at the half, down by a count of 32-27 against Michigan State. Did think that this could be a relatively rough spot for them as Michigan State did shoot 5 of 8 from three-point range in the first half. And if things iron out, Minnesota should be able to claw their way back. They actually won the turnover battle in this one. For Michigan State, they did not get a single offensive rebound in the first half, but they were just able to go into flamethrower mode from three-point range with Ty Walker, Jaden Akins combining for 20 out of the team's 32 points in the first half. So we shall see what happens there. We have not seen a lot of overs in Houston games, but we did see one on Tuesday, and if you had Houston laying the number, this was relatively brutal as Houston was up by a count of 78-54 with about 2 minutes and change remaining, and as a matter of fact, the lead was even bigger. They were up by 25 plus points throughout in much of this one, but Oklahoma State as about a 21-21.5 point underdog. They're clawing their way back, and they're able to get the cover by a count of 79-63 for Oklahoma State. They go just 5 of 21 from 3, but the one thing about Houston is that they will foul you, and Oklahoma State won 24 of 37 at the free throw line. Oklahoma State lost the turnover battle by a count of 17-10, and for this Houston team, they did have Jamal Shedd just go off for 23 points, 4 assists. Meanwhile, you had Emmanuel Sharp be sharp. He goes 3 of 5 from three-point range, 16 points, so nice easy win for Houston, but if you bet this one, was a little bit rough there. Not as rough as anyone that's been backing DePaul, though, as if you're backing DePaul, I just don't know what to tell you at this point. As for the Blue Demons, well, they demonized your bankroll once again, 85-57. St. John's is able to get it done. They were laying north of 20, and they cover all numbers for DePaul. They're now 7-15-1 against the spread. For St. John's, you had pretty much everyone just firing all cylinders. Jordan Dingle along with Dennis Jenkins were both able to give you 14 points in this one. Very good collective effort, as for St. John's, they go 15-40 from three-point range. Meanwhile, DePaul, they had 19 turnovers and 18 made buckets. That is not great, to say the least. I've been a big fan of the South Carolina team this season, and this was rough if you laid the number, and I was one of those people that did. This was a rough non-cover at South Carolina. They go to now 17-6 against the spread, 68-65 the final at South Carolina. I mean, they were up in this game by 17 points early on in the second half. You did have Ole Miss make a little bit of a nice surge, and for this Ole Miss team, they did get quite fortunate with the fact that South Carolina just could not find a way to be able to buy a bucket to save their lives. The last points that they were able to get was at the 3:47 mark, and if you had the under in this game, that was absolutely glorious for you as well. But for South Carolina, they do find a way to be able to eke this one out with them going 9-27 from three. But Miles Sute, Taylon Cooper were both able to give you 12 points apiece, and the guy that's really been going under the radar for this team, Cullen Murray Boyles, a top 100 recruit that was a little bit banged up to begin the season. He now goes off for 16 plus points for his second straight game. He's been able to do a nice job of giving this team quite a bit on the glass. So no cover for South Carolina. That one was a little bit rough. And our DK Network write-up picks have been good all season long, but a terrible second half for George Washington. 88-65. Rhode Island goes on the road. They take it to George Washington. George Washington was up at the half in this game, and then they just completely gave up and they completely flatlined, as Zeke Montgomery off the bench for Rhode Island was able to have 30 points in this one. He goes 11 of 14 from the floor for George Washington. They lose a turnover battle against one of the worst teams with regards to turnover ratio in all of college basketball, 14-10. George Washington lost the rebound battle. Just a bad one in that one, and we will look to turn the page and move forward, because that was not our best work, but at the same time, it certainly does happen no matter how good or bad of a handicapper that you are. And when it comes to Tuesdays, we always get some very interesting action, and the team that has been your best team at being able to cover in the MAC, well, that's been anyone that's been playing Buffalo. As Buffalo is now 6-15 against the spread, another less than savory performance from them. They fall to Bowling Green by a count of 87-73 for Buffalo. You just weren't able to get a lot going on the glass. This team lost that rebound battle 36-31 for Buffalo, 14 turnovers in this one, and then Marcus Hill, 27 big points for a Bowling Green team that they themselves have been able to do a relatively solid job recently. Ball State, they moved to against the spread 13-8. They lose in overtime to Ohio by a count of 84-79. Ohio had firm control of this game early, turned into a nip and tuck sort of game late, and then in the end, Ohio was able to get the job done as they were able to win by a count of 12-7 in the second half. So if you did have this total under, that was rough that game went to overtime, as that was a little bit overwhelming there. And if you're taking a look at one of the top 25 teams that were in action on Tuesday, Dayton, they were able to go on the road. They knocked out St. Joe's. They were in the final minute, and they're currently up by 11 points. So they should be able to cover that -2 to -2.5, as Dayton, as I record this, 11 of 21 from three-point range. Nate Santos, 21 big points in this one. For St. Joe's, they looked like a bunch of average Joes trying to cover them, and for St. Joe's, they lose a rebound battle in this one as well. So Dayton just continues to find a way to be able to get it done, and Dayton has been a very good over team for you all season long as well, because this is typically a team that's a little bit slower, a little bit grimier. St. Joe's now 14 overs to 9 unders thus far this season. Dayton 12 overs to 10 unders thus far this season. And Rhode Island also has been a good over team as well. 14 overs to 8 unders. That was a game against George Washington that did fall under the total, so be mindful of that. Kentucky has also been one of your best over teams in all of college basketball as well. Entering into Tuesday, they were at 16 overs, 5 unders, and this is another game that's going to go over the total. Right now, they're up on Vanderbilt 87-65 with 7:40 remaining in the second half and a closing total of 151.5. So feel very comfortable in saying that Kentucky right now on their way to be able to get cover, as well as this Vanderbilt team. Man, it's been rough for them. Kentucky through about 32.5 minutes, 13 of 22 from three. Austin Reeves, a 6 of 9, very nice three-point shooting start for Kentucky. They're going to be able to completely blitz that one, and they're going to be able to get that one home for you. Air Force has actually been one of your better over teams as well. well. We are unsure of how that result turned out, as we have yet to get tip-off between they and San Diego State, but entered into Tuesday with 15 overs to 6 unders thus far this season. San Jose State has actually been a very good over team as well. They just got started against Fresno State. They've been 15 overs to 6 unders thus far this season as well. And then when it comes to another game that is in progress, right now it's nip and tuck between Butler and UConn. UConn currently up 52-44. 9 minutes and change remaining in this one. UConn closed about 13 after 14-point favorites for Butler. This team has been able to do a relatively solid job with their offense. Defense has been a little bit more suspect, but Butler, as I'm recording this, is actually winning the rebound battle 29-21. Problem for them has been UConn has been able to do a tremendous job of utilizing one Donovan Clingan. He's already got a double-double in this game. And for this Butler team, DJ Davis, 19 out of the team's first 44 points in this one. So we shall see how that turns out. We saw Clemson go on the road and they took down North Carolina 80-76. You were wondering if this was going to be a letdown spot for North Carolina, and the answer turned out to be a firm yes. As for North Carolina, they go 9 of 27 from three-point range. Clemson very nearly blew this game, by the way. They were up very big early on. They had a double-figure lead throughout much of the first half, and then things melted away on them, but they were able to recover late with P.J. Hall being the main stabilizer, being able to give the team 25 points for Clemson. They lose the rebound battle by kind of 43-42 as Armando Bacot had 24 points, 13 rebounds, but just didn't really have Harrison Ingram help him out. 11 points, 6 boards, was a little bit more of a pedestrian night for him, so that was a little bit costly. And what was costly is if you had any sort of confidence in Georgia Tech whatsoever on Tuesday. They got down in this game, and I'm not even kidding when I say this, by kind of 35-6. Actually 33-5. I mean, my goodness. This Wake Forest team just absolutely laid waste to Georgia Tech, and we've seen this from Georgia Tech a few times. They got run out of the gym by Cincinnati as well a little bit earlier in the season. Georgia Tech is prone to these just big giant flops, 3 of 24 from three-point range for them. Wake Forest went 17 of 17 at the free throw line. Every single Wake Forest starter was able to get into double figures, just complete and utter domination, and, well, things just continue to get worse for Ohio State, as Ohio State is just one of those teams that I don't understand why people were anointing Chris Holtmann as being a really good coach or anything like that, as right now he's been stinking up the joint. 76-73. Indiana goes on the road. They get it done. For Indiana, Trey Galloway had a big performance, 25 points. He's had a rough season to this point, but he was really able to regroup here. Malik Renew, 26 points, 14 rebounds. For Indiana, they win the rebound battle 36-30. They also win the turnover battle 12-11, as Roddy Gale was able to chip in their 19 points, but for Ohio State, they go just 5 of 17 from three-point range, and that has been rough for them all season long. What has been rough is taking overs in Rutgers games as well. Rutgers now 16 unders to 6 overs, 56-53. They go on the road. They take it to Maryland, a Maryland team that went 2 of 18 from three-point range. Meanwhile, Rutgers just 3 of 13 from distance. Julian Reese, he had 19 points, 12 boards, and 5 turnovers in this game. Meanwhile, for Rutgers, Mowat Mogg was the guy that was able to step up. He was able to supply the team with 15 big points in this one. You also saw Florida State and Boston College play a game where neither team got to 65. Florida State got that win by kind of 63-62. What's been a very interesting Florida State team all season long. Against the spread, they're up to 12-9-1. Meanwhile, Boston College has been just 9-13 against the spread. So has been some fascinating results, to say the least, out there. And, well, with regards to what we're seeing in college basketball right now, if you've been taking a look at the home underdogs, that has been a little bit rough for you as well. We might have a little bit of cleanup on the podcast because we still do have a few games like Boise State versus Colorado State that are in the balance. Nevada's currently up on Utah State by kind of 45-39. That game has about 15 minutes remaining in the second half as well. So if anything notable happens, we will alert you on the podcast tomorrow. But that said, if you're looking at these home underdogs, it has been relatively rough with a few results pending from Tuesday. 45-51-1 against the spread over the last 7 days. Meanwhile, overs, they continue to be overwhelming. 164 overs to 155 unders in the last 7 days. Meanwhile, home teams overall are hitting at 44.2% against the spread over the last 7 days. That is rough. And overall for the season, home teams are at 1,870, 1,867, and 65 against the spread. About as 50-50 as it gets, but home underdogs have been the ones that have been rough. .491, .515, and 17 against the spread. That's a 48.8% hit rate. And overs, they continue to hit at 51.3%, 1,930 overs to 1,832 under. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's what we all got on Tuesday. Coming up next, we're going to be turning it forward to Wednesday and taking a look at the SEC with Blake Lovell, who does amazing work over at Southeastern 14. On the flip side, you're on Chris Gussie with myself, Greg Peters, and out, a part of the Davidson Family Podcast. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Chris Gussie with myself, Greg Peters, and now part of the Davidson Family Podcast. It is always great to be joined by this man, Blake Lovell. He does tremendous work taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball over at Southeastern 14. It has, without a doubt, been a very interesting and fun year in college basketball. Blake, even when things look very, very insane and crazy, is able to maintain some sanity. We very much do appreciate that. And to be able to follow all of his great work over on Twitter/X, that's at the Blake Lovell. Last name is spelled Lovell altogether. And Blake, it's always great to have you aboard. Thank you.
No, thanks so much for having me on, Greg.
Thank you for joining me, Blake. And Blake, we saw a wild weekend out there in the SEC. We saw a game where Tennessee got to 100 points, which I didn't know if I was ever going to be able to see that. Texas A&M in a nip-and-tuck game pulled it out against Florida. But what really is standing out to me right now in the SEC, and we are doing this ahead of their game on Wednesday, how about Alabama, the beatdown that they put on Mississippi State? And we talked about it a little bit on the podcast last week, but I think it's worth bringing up. It feels like this Alabama team is one of the top teams in all of college basketball, but is not being viewed by many in the public as that.
Yeah, I think, Greg, again, going back to our conversations in non-conference play, and Alabama was sitting there at 6-5, and I think that's the reason, is because they have that 6 in the loss column. I think everyone just kind of says, all right, well, they're maybe not like some of these other teams, that have 2, 3, 4 losses, something like that. But we talked about it back then. My theme has stayed the same. I just think what we're seeing with Alabama was sort of inevitable with this team. They were always going to have a chance to get better defensively, and they have, but their offense was not going to go anywhere. And it turns out that they are just finding ways to, like you just mentioned, outscore teams like by huge margins. Being able to do that against Mississippi State. If you don't have a good offensive game against Alabama, you're in trouble because they're going to score. And, they've had one bad game in SEC play. That was the game at Tennessee. But it's like they still put up 71 points. It's not, their normal average, but that's just what Alabama does. And so they are, again, leading the way in the SEC as of right now. They have the huge showdown with Auburn coming up. And I just think when you look at the way Mark Sears is playing, all the guys around him, Grant Nelson's been more aggressive. Aaron Estrada and Latrell Wrightsell, I think, have been underrated in terms of what their roles are. Ryland Griffin, and then the big guys, Wagi or Diabate, like they've just got a really good roster. And even Jaron Stevenson's coming off one of his best games. So I think you're seeing the depth kind of unfold with this Alabama team, and they are a lot of fun to watch.
They certainly are a lot of fun to watch, and you might need to catch your breath a few times during the game as well, because Alabama, they certainly do play at warp speed, but man, this team has been able to emerge, and it is going to be really interesting to see what we get out of them on Wednesday, because it's one of the bigger games that we are going to be seeing on Wednesday and really all week in college basketball when they have the return trip to Auburn. The first time that the Iron Bowl took place this season, that was in Tuscaloosa. Alabama was able to get that win, but for Auburn, after they had a rough week 2 weeks ago where they lost on the road against, ironically enough, Alabama and Mississippi State, they rebounded with 2 wins that they should have gotten, but they did so in convincing fashion, winning by double figures on the road against Ole Miss, pounding the tar out of a Vanderbilt team that's right now looking like just really, really bad, to say the least. I was going to say the worst team in the SEC, but they just knocked off Missouri, so they're jockeying for position there. But that said, how do you take a look at this Wednesday matchup, one where we saw it come down to the very end the first time around, and I wouldn't expect anything different this time?
Yeah, I think, again, like you mentioned with Auburn, the difference certainly with what they did at Ole Miss versus what they did in the other 2 road games previously, including the Alabama, was that they just managed to find a shot from outside. And that's the thing with this Auburn team. For the longest time there, I said I don't know if they have any weaknesses, really, when you look at how they play. But the three-point shots kind of become close to a weakness, especially if teams kind of force them to take a lot of shots there. And, that's kind of what we saw against Mississippi State in a grinded-out type game. They couldn't hit shots from outside. It's tough to score in the paint against Mississippi State, given what they have defensively. You look at what they did against Ole Miss. They're able to really come out, shoot it well, hit 12 threes, shoot 44%, and really just play so well, especially in that second half when you look at what Janai Broome did. I think this Auburn team, I said after those 2 losses that I just didn't think there was a reason to panic. because when you look at the overall body of work, they still have 18 wins by double digits this season. There's no one out there that's done it to this level. And I think just the overall balance they have, the depth, Greg, we've talked about it all season, easily one of the deepest teams in the country. And when you have a superstar like Broome, if they can just figure out ways to at least improve on the three-point shooting and or not take as many threes, I think they're going to be fine because they're just so good in a lot of different areas elsewhere that, it's going to be very interesting to see. But like you mentioned too, important week for Auburn, home against Alabama, at Florida on Saturday. 2 big games for the Tigers to try to pick up those signature wins that everyone kind of looks at them and feels like they're lacking at this point.
Yep, it is a massive week for them, and I could fully see this being a case where, in terms of the Iron Bowl on the hardwood, you see Alabama take that first game a few weeks ago, and then you see the return trip be another nip and tuck game that Auburn is able to pull out to be able to split the season series. So going to be very fascinating to see what we get there as Blake Lovell does tremendous work over at Southeastern 14 is joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And Blake, I do think that we need to talk about Kentucky as well, because with this Kentucky Wildcats team, I was alluding to it a little bit earlier, they gave up 100 points over the weekend against Tennessee. That was very much not sightly, to say the least. It is a Kentucky team that, as we know, this offense has been a flamethrower all season long, but it's been the defense that has been of question. We are doing this before we know the result of Kentucky versus Vanderbilt, and if they lose to Vanderbilt, then I think we should really be having some concerns with Kentucky. But that's it. Prior to the Vanderbilt game, how do you evaluate this Kentucky team? Because I do think that with Kentucky, them not turning the ball over, them doing a lot of good things on offense is solid, but I do think that it is very clear that there are some, shall we say, warts with this Kentucky team, and they were very much exposed over the last few games.
I'll admit, I was someone who thought that they could fix this a bit easier than they have, and I was like, I'm not that concerned with Kentucky. I think they're going to outscore people, but it's like when you look at the defensive numbers the way they are right now, they're scoring a lot of points, but they're still not able to outscore people. And that is, I think, more concerning when you look at it. Like you mentioned, I mean, they give up 197 combined points in their past 2 home games. I'd be willing to guess, I'm sure the stat's been thrown out there, but that hasn't happened in a very long time in Lexington. And so, yeah, to lose those games back-to-back, an important week coming up just because they want to try to regain some confidence, but they're also banged up, right? DJ Wagner hasn't played in a couple games. Trey Mitchell's been kind of playing through a back injury. And so there's just a lot of things with this Kentucky team. If they're going to make a run in March, they got to be fully healthy. It starts with that. And I know Cal's brought that up multiple times. But they've also just got to find ways to not have these defensive lapses that they're having. Because the thing about this team is you look at it and you see how much potential and upside there is because of how good they are offensively. Like we said, Greg, going into the season, we thought they could shoot the ball better than some of his previous teams, but we didn't think they'd be a top 5 team in the country in the way they're shooting the three and just how well their offense flows, especially when DJ Wagner's in there too. And so to give that away just because you can't play defense, like it would be a shame because I do think this Kentucky team has a lot of the tools you need to make that run, but it's all going to come back to the defense now, and they've got to find a way to get better there because, as we always say, when you go on the road, your offense is going to struggle sometimes. You're not always going to play well, and that's where you need your defense to kind of bring you up a little bit. And so far, when you look at some of these games, it worked at Arkansas, worked a little bit at Florida, although they still gave up 85 points in that game, a month ago. But everywhere else, the physicality of a South Carolina game, not being able to stop Tennessee after they just come off, their worst offensive performance of the season. Definitely a little bit of disappointment, I would say, now for this Kentucky team.
Yep, there's no question about it. It was a rough week for them. And on the flip side of that game that we saw on Saturday, what do we make right now out of this Tennessee team? Because if you look at the overall efficiency numbers, this is still a pretty rock-solid Tennessee team. They did still give up 90 points in that game, though, against Kentucky. But all of a sudden, this team has been able to find some formidable offense. Don't Connect is right now looking like an All-American candidate, and this is a Tennessee team that I still need to see it in March. I really do think that that's one of those teams where that caveat is going to exist until they do bust through. Fair or not, it has been a team that has had those times in the NCAA tournament where they just run cold, but at the same time, this does very much look like a different Tennessee team in the past, for better or for worse. This is a team that is finding ways to be able to get wins, and right now they're finding ways to be able to get points up on the board.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, Dalton Connect's been the difference with him and just how dynamic he is on offense. I mean, there's just not a lot of players out there like him. And, of course, everyone sort of, I think, looked at the South Carolina game, looked at some of the other recent games outside of that one and said, all right, are we getting back to that point with Tennessee where they're going to have these stretches where they can't score? And then even if they do score, is it going to be anyone other than Dalton Connect? As we saw, they came back with a pretty strong response to that at Kentucky. Even if you want to put the defensive issues aside, you've still got to respect the fact that, Josiah Jordan-James had a tremendous offensive performance, his best in a Tennessee uniform, 26 points. Zakai Ziegler had 26 points. Vescovi kind of came back with a little more consistency with 11. Adu had 11. I think that's what it's going to come down to for Tennessee. Yes, it's great to have a guy who can just take over the game, but you've got to have other guys who can consistently contribute. Again, kind of going back to like what I said with Kentucky, even if your offense doesn't always travel, even if you have some games like if they had at home against South Carolina where you just play a team that is just going to grind you, you've got to have other people who can step up. And they didn't have that in the South Carolina game. There's been a couple other games this season where people have been a little nervous, thinking, well, Dalton Connect's going to have to kind of put us on his shoulders and carry us, which he's been able to do for the most part. And that's, again, the luxury of having a guy like that. But I do still think you want to see them come out of this Kentucky game and be kind of the overall team you think they can be. And that's getting offensive production out of everybody. Of course, the defense is going to be there, like you said. They gave up a lot of points to Kentucky, but I just think that's Kentucky offensively at home. That seems to be the trend. So I think defense will settle down and be just fine. But it's really going to come down to, as usual, preventing those offensive lapses, but more so this season, it's preventing those lapses and not putting everything on Dalton Connect when you start to get into some of these close games.
Yep, absolutely. And it's nice to have a guy like a Josiah Jordan-James who feels like the Van Wilder of college basketball, by the way. He has been there for a very, very long time, but he gives you all sorts of versatility. You were mentioning Zakai Ziegler hasn't done it too much as a scorer, but has been able to do a good job of being able to facilitate as well. So going to be very interesting to see what we get out of Tennessee moving forward, as Blake Lovell, who does great work over at Southeastern 14, is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And you do such an amazing job taking a look at the SEC, but I know you're locked into all 362 D1 teams. You join me all the time during the offseason, taking a look at a lot of these mid-majors as well. And I do want to ask if there's a few teams outside the SEC over the last few weeks that have really been catching your attention. This could be to the positive or the negative, because we did see like a billion games that happened on Saturday. So there's a lot of ways that you can slice it and dice it. But are there a few teams in general on the national landscape that are right now catching your attention?
I guess I won't give my stock answer of basically just picking your, whatever team you want to pick in the Mountain West at this point, because we know we talked a lot about them this year. But there are some teams I think that are out there that I would at least keep my eye on. And of course, one of them does have an SEC tie, and that's because the guy used to coach in the SEC, of course, and that is Bryce Drew. I mean, this Grand Canyon team, Greg, as you know, 21-2 now, and I know they don't play again until Saturday, and just I think this team becomes more interesting to me because clearly when you look at, as we know, we've talked over the years about just the changing state of the WAC and all of that. I mean, there's no question that they're the front runner to win that league, and I'm just curious to see kind of how they continue to play here down the stretch. But I will say, just kind of keeping up with them, they at least have my attention based on the fact that they are 21-2. And again, I think Bryce Drew's done a really good job since he's been there, as we know, the overall roster that he's put together. So that, of course, is the team. Another one, Indiana State. I know we talked about that Indiana State team way back in November, because that was when they were coming off that 102-80 loss in Alabama. And I said at the time, I'm like, look, going into this, I said, I don't know if Alabama fans realize this, but like that's a good Indiana State team that they just put 102 on and beat by 22 on their home floor. And, of course, since then, we've seen this team do a lot of good things. They just won the rematch against Drake, and I think they're on, I think it's a 7-game winning streak. They played some really good basketball, finding ways to win these games in some tough spots. I know Belmont's not the team of old, Greg, or like they have been in recent years, but even finding a way to win that game at Belmont the way they did, there's just a lot to like about this team. Of course, offensively, if we're looking at it from that standpoint, this is a team that is so good on that side of the floor. I'll be honest with you, I wish Alabama and Indiana State would play again like right now. Like that'd be a great matchup to get those two playing again instead of what we saw in November. But definitely the Sycamores are a team that I would certainly continue to keep my eye on. I know MVC fans know all about it, but I'm really looking forward to that tournament as usual. But man, it's a lot of fun to watch this team right now.
Oh, it is. And Indiana State, 19-2 in their last 21 games ever since that Alabama loss. They play on Wednesday against Valparaiso, and they're going to be a very, very sizable favorite in that one. And then I do want to get your thoughts on this game that we're going to be seeing on Wednesday as well, because, if Indiana State subs their toe against Valparaiso, that would not be too terrific to say the least. But It's very strange to see both of these teams have the same record going into Wednesday. Georgia and Mississippi State are both at 14-8. It's been a little bit of a free fall recently for Mississippi State. Meanwhile, for Georgia, they themselves have lost 3 straight games. But for Georgia, despite the 3-game losing streak, there's been a lot of encouraging signs for them. What do you make out of this matchup involving a Georgia team that they don't do necessarily one thing great, but they've been solid across the board? And this is a Mississippi State team that's looking to hang their head on defense, but it's now given up 79+ in 3 out of their last 4 games.
Yeah, I feel like what you said about Georgia, I've kind of held against them a little bit because someone was asking, like, what is it with Georgia? Why do they keep losing some of these games where it's like, hey, they had the lead against Tennessee. They had the lead against Alabama. They played well at times, even against South Carolina. They had their chances. Why is it? Are they not able to kind of, get over the hump in these games? They've got good offensive players, but I don't think they're just a great offensive team. And I think what they run into is just times where there is so much pressure on them defensively where they can't hold off some of these just high-scoring teams. Again, think about who they've played. They played Alabama, Florida, Kentucky, Tennessee. They played South Carolina twice. Those are different kind of games. But I think with Georgia, it's just you want to see kind of that extra something offensively. They've got good offensive players, but do they have that one guy that can just completely take over a game when they need him to? I don't know. And I think they have to kind of figure that out here, entering a pretty tough stretch for their next 6 on the road. And of course, as you mentioned, it starts with that Mississippi State game. And that's the good news for Mississippi State, that it's at home, because they have not been a good team on the road. I think they have been an easy one to kind of look at and just sort of fade on the road these days because they just don't play as well. But I will also give them a little credit. They played the toughest SEC schedule, I think, through the midway point. Like 9 games in, I think they played the hardest schedule. They're 3-6, and it's kind of similar to the way it was last year. Of course, we all remember they started 1-7 last year in the SEC, made a run on a better back half of the SEC schedule to make the NCAA tournament in the first 4 game. But I think they got a chance to do that again here, Greg. 3 of their next 4 at home. They got Georgia, at Missouri, home against Arkansas, home against Ole Miss, all very winnable games. And I think with Toulouse Smith and this defense and what they can do, to me, it kind of, again, goes back to Georgia. I just don't know if Georgia has the offensive firepower to feel like they're going to go in and win a game like this. And this does feel like a spot where, man, we have played such a grind of a schedule coming off these road games, a good bounce back home spot for the Bulldogs. So it seems like a pretty good setup for this Mississippi State team.
Yep, and for Georgia, it does feel like outside of your main 2 guards and Abdul Rahim along with Thomason, you just don't know what you're going to be able to get out of the offense night in, night out. So I agree with you there. And Blake, I know you're doing such an incredible job taking a look at this game that we all know and love of college basketball. The SEC has been one of the most fascinating conferences in all of America this season. You've done a great job of being able to cover it all. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, I always appreciate it, Greg. You can find us on YouTube, Southeastern 14, daily SEC videos / podcasts. We do them there, usually multiple per day, looking at all these games, sharing our reaction, and a bunch of fun stuff like that. So you can check us out, Southeastern 14 on YouTube. And yeah, all the other college basketball stuff, you can find me on Twitter /X at the Blake Lovell.
Blake does such an incredible job taking a look at this tremendous game of college basketball every single time he joins this podcast. His insights make us all just a little bit smarter. So a big thanks, Blake, for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday as we eat some big shots. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always great to get Blake Lovell aboard. He does such good work over at Southeastern 14, enlightening us about this great game of college basketball, doing tremendous work, taking a look at an SEC that has been so interesting this year. But as we know with Blake, he does a great job covering the entire landscape of college basketball and always lends great insights whenever he's on the show. So big thanks to Blake for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday as we eat some big shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter /X feed at GNet_D1. We're going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the bigger conferences first, and then the games involving the smaller conferences are going to be at the bottom. That is going to be a lot of Big South action. We got the Patriot League, the Atlantic Sun. If we had any America East, Northeast action, that would be at the bottom as well, but I believe that we have covered all the conferences that will be on the extra games today, so let's get things started with 669, 670 on the betting board. St. Louis hits the road face-off against LaSalle. LaSalle is exploring and cover. They open up as 3-point favorites. As I'm doing this, they're falling to between 2 and 2.5 in a lot of spots. Total on this game is 149. Really don't understand the steam coming in on St. Louis. I did set LaSalle as a 5.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. I recognize this is a LaSalle team that leaves a lot to be desired on defense, but leaves even more to be desired on defense. You guessed it, St. Louis. St. Louis, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 331st in all of college basketball. They make LaSalle look like the purple people eaters. LaSalle is 239th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and for LaSalle, even though they have gotten some pieces back in the fold, Bradley Irizarry is one of those two-time transfers that was out towards the beginning part of the season, and now you've got Sincere Parker back in the fold as well. These guys have not necessarily been themselves throughout the entirety of the season. Parker is giving you about 12.5 points, 4.5 boards per contest. You expected a little bit more there. To have Gibson Jimerson, who's able to shoot 37% from three-point range for a core in St. Louis. They're pretty solid from three-point range. They do shoot about 36% from the outside, with Gibson Jimerson being a big reason why, and this is a LaSalle team that they can be had from the outside, as for LaSalle, they're allowing opponents to shoot 35.7% from three overall. That does balloon to about 38.5% from three-point range when they're at home, but St. Louis, they let up a lot of wide-open looks as well. The St. Louis team, they allow opponents to shoot 38.2% from three-point range in a road/neutral court environment, and this is a St. Louis team that they have a tough time being able to knife things down low. Terrence Hargrove has been able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game, and for LaSalle, this team is outside the top 250 with regards to rebound rate, but both of these teams have their issues down low, and I do like the backcourt of Jamari Breakus along Khalil Brantley, who have been able to combine for about 30 points per contest, 9.2 assists, 3 steals for a LaSalle team that does a better job taking care of the ball. 9.5 turnovers per game. In terms of turnovers per possession, a top 30 team in all of college basketball. They shoot about 34% from three as a collective, but you've got Breakus along with Andres Marrero, both shooting north of 40% from three-point range. Even though this is a team that's a little bit rough down low, you've got two guys in Deshaun Shepard along with Rokas Joe Sarius, who have been able to combine for about 11 rebounds per game. I do think that LaSalle has enough to be able to get it done against a St. Louis team that they've won one conference game thus far this season. I recognize that it's been rough for LaSalle as well, but with the way that LaSalle is able to take care of the ball and the way that St. Louis has went down the toilet bowl with their offense, 65 points or fewer in 4 out of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, you've got a LaSalle team that, it's not been amazing, but at the very least, they've gotten to at least 69 points to beat each other the last 3 games. They've been rather competitive in quite a few of these games. I do like LaSalle to get it done. I do think that St. Louis going to continue to have their struggles on offense. These are 2 mid-tempo teams, so I did set my total at a 147.5. I'm looking under, and with LaSalle, going to be willing to lay up to 5 with them. Now that this is coming down to 2, all the more value with that. 671, 672 on the betting board. Georgetown, it's road face-off against Seton. Seton is a favorite of 13 points. Tonight's game is 141.5. Set my line at 12.5. 13 is my minimum buy point on Georgetown. Now, it's a rough Georgetown defense here, well outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and I do feel like the raw numbers for Seton are a little bit misleading. They're only about 100th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. So the Pirates, they've been playing much better recently, and some of their numbers are a little bit warped by that triple overtime game that they played against Creighton, because that was a game that was 67-67 going into overtime. So if you look at regulation and regulation only, this team has now given up 72 points or fewer in 6 out of their last 7 games, dating back to when they last played against Georgetown. That was a nip-and-tuck 74-70 win in which Georgetown shot 10 of 35 from 3, while Seton shot 7 of 15 from distance. I do think that Seton is going to be able to do a solid job of being able to hold it down in this one. I do think that they do a better job than they did the first time around when they lost a turnover battle 17-12, as you've been able to get a pair of guys in the backcourt in Dre Davis, Elmir Dawes firing all cylinders. They've been able to combine for about 28 points per contest, shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range, and I believe at the time Kadari Richmond was dealing with some ailments points and a little bit of illness. He's been your main man, 16 points, 7 boards, 5 assists. Doesn't really shoot it from 3, but pretty boxed out with that regard. It is a Seton team that they do have their turnover warts going back to that first game. They have been turning the ball over 13 times per contest. That said, Georgetown turns the ball over 13 times per game as well, though Georgetown, even though they are a team that's well outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate, while this is a bunch in Seton Hall that has been able to climb into the top 80 with regards to rebound rate. They do have Supreme Cook. He's been able to give you about 8 boards, 11 points per contest, and I do like the game of Jaden Epps, who's been able to supply 18.5 points. Does turn the ball over 3.7 times per contest, but it's a Georgetown team that, as a whole, they are shooting about 34.5% from three-point range. This Georgetown team is going to let up some open looks down low, but they actually do an okay job from the perimeter, about 135th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. They do face off against a Seton team that, all in all, they've been relatively solid in just all facets, not necessarily great in one sign of defense, but at the same time, they are allowing opponents to shoot about 33.8% from three. That's 188th in all of college basketball. Not great, not terrible, but that does balloon in a roadside shoot court environment, now to about 37.5%. I do think that Georgetown has enough out there in the backcourt with Rowan Brumbaugh and company to be able to hold in there, so I did set my line at 12.5 here at 13. I'm going to be willing to take the points. Seton well outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game. Georgetown was held to about 70 points the first time around. I do think that they get held down a little bit more this time around. Meanwhile, it was a 74-70 game first time around with Seton shooting 7-15 from 3. I do think that diminishes just a little bit here. I did set my total at a 140.5. Georgetown team has been having a little bit of a rough time putting the ball in the basket. 67 points of fear in 3 of their last 5 games, and Seton has been doing a solid job with their defense. So looking at the under and at 13 plus, looking at the points with Georgetown 673, 674 on the betting board. East Tennessee is going to be playing us a Wofford, and Wofford is a underdog of 3 points. Your total on this game is 141.5. I did set this line at 3 myself, so we're going to be waiting on a little bit of line movement. I'm seeing a little bit of juice on a lot of these threes, and a little bit earlier in the day, you were able to find a few different numbers, so if we could get up to a 3.5 or more, that would be my buy point on Wofford. If we could get down to about a 2.5 or less, that'd be the point in which I'd be willing to lay it with ETSU, so we are in a little bit of wait-and-see mode, but as of right now, I'm sort of thinking that we're probably going to be able to get to about a 3.5 to a 4, which would put me on a Wofford team that they have been rough with regards to their defense. This Wofford team is also playing quite a bit more up-tempo this year than they did in past years. In past years, this is a Wofford team that typically is like in the bottom 100 with regards to total possessions per game. Now they're in the top half of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game. They do see a drop-off, Wofford does, in terms of their points scored on a per possession basis, scoring about 10.5 points fewer per 100 possessions in a roadside shoot court environment rather than when they are at home. And certainly this defense ranking 333rd in college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Not great, but for Wofford, they actually give up about 2.8 points fewer per 100 possessions when they do leave home rather than when they are at home. And they go up against an ETSU team that may have been rough with regards to their offense as well. ETSU overall is shooting about 29.8% from 3 with a little bit over 12 turnovers per game. They are well outside the top 225 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and they're just a little bit top heavy. Jaden Seymour, Ibi Asamoah combined for about 30.5 points per contest, and then Komari Peterson has been a little bit of a do-it-all guy. 3.5 assists, 13.5 points per contest, and Asamoah does shoot 35.5% from 3, but Asamoah is the only player on the roster that averages more than 3 points per contest, shooting above 32.3% from 3-point range. And if you really want to get to this Wofford team, you just beat them from the outside. This Wofford team, 342nd in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. So I do think that is going to be able to keep Wofford relatively lively in this one. And for Wofford, they do a solid job in the backcourt with having Dylan Bailey, Corey Tripp combining for about 20.5 points per contest. Tripp has been up to about 3.5 assists per contest. Overall, it's a Wofford team that they do shoot 36% from 3. Now, if you do have a trepidation with this Wofford team in a close game, they are a bottom 30 team in all of college basketball with regards to free throw shooting percentage at 61.9%. But this is a Wofford team that they should be able to do a relatively solid job down low. You've got an ETSU team that is about 150th or so with regards to rebound rate. You've had Jaden Seymour be able to supply you with about 6 rebounds per game. You've been able to get about 6.5 to 7 rebounds per contest as well out of Karen Boyd. But for this Wofford team, Kyler File, which might be the best overall low post player in this game with his 9 rebounds per game. It is a Wofford bunch at Currently, they're sitting at 99th in the country with regards to their rebound rate. It is a Wofford team that has been okay at being able to take care of the ball as well, and for Wofford, they have been able to get to at least 77 points in each of their last 3 games. Meanwhile, you've got an ETSU team that is doing a pretty superb job on defense. 73 points or fewer surrendered in 3 out of their last 4 games, but this is an offense that, and it's suspect, they've won each of their last 2 games, scoring 54 and 62 points respectively. So I do think that things are going to be a little bit more slowed down, and Wofford has been a little bit improved with their defense towards the middle to back part of conference play thus far. That said, I do think that ETSU is going to be able to bust through just a little bit, and this is a Wofford team that they've been able to put up quite a few points of their own. I do think that this is close enough for late game filling, so going to be looking at the over, set my line at a 3 with regards to the spread, so at 3.5 or more, looking at the points with Wofford, and here at a 141.5 up to a 142.5, I'm going to be willing to take a look at the over. 675, 676 on the betting board. Valparaiso, it's the road they're facing off against Indiana State. Indiana State, a 20 to a 21-point favorite, and your total on this game, it is 153.5. I did set my line at a 20, so now that we're getting to 21, I think we've gone a little bit too far. This is a Valparaiso, now Beacons team. I have not made the transition from Crusaders to Beacons, but that said, a Beacons team that has certainly been lacking a lot of firepower in offense. They're well outside the top 225 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but they do have Isaiah Stafford, a nice go-to scorer. He's able to give you 17.5 points per contest for a Valparaiso team that they're not bad at taking care of the ball. They turn the ball over 11 times per contest, but they only shoot about 33% from 3-point range, and for Valparaiso, they just don't have enough down low to be able to take advantage of an Indiana State team that they're not necessarily the most stout with regards to post. So Robbie Avila, he's a do-it-all player. Robbie Avila has been absolutely tremendous of being able to supply you with right around about 13 plus points per contest, shoots nearly 40% from 3-point range at 6'10", 4 assists. He truly does it all. Meanwhile, you do have on the flip side Isaiah Stafford, who's been able to give you a steal and a half. He's able to throw in there 17.5 points per contest for Valparaiso. But Valparaiso, when it comes to their rebound rate, they are clocking in just 318th in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, this is an Indiana State team in which the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. They're just such a good wheeling and dealing machine, a top 15 team in all of college basketball with regards to 3-point shooting percentage. And despite the fact that for Indiana State, other than Avila, you really don't have that one primary rebounder, these guys all do a good job by committee. Jason Kent has now been able to give you about 8.5 rebounds per game. He's thrown in there 13.5 points per contest. You've got Julian Larry, Xavier Bledson combining for about 6.7 assists to fewer than 4 turnovers per contest, while Larry shoots 53.5% from 3 as a whole. It's a Sycamore team that they do shoot 40% from 3-point range, but I do think that Valparaiso is going to do an okay job of being able to hold in there. The offense has been a little bit better recently, scoring at least 69 points in 4 out of the last 5 games, and this is an Indiana State team that is prone to giving up some points. They've given up 72 plus in 3 out of their last 4 games. Now, for this Indiana State team, they're an absolute rocket ship on offense. They're a top 15 team in all of college basketball with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. Isaiah Swope has been able to chip in there 18 points per contest, so it's going to be a hard guard for Valparaiso. Valparaiso certainly not going to be a team that you want to sprinkle the money line on or anything like that. That said, I do think that we went just a little bit too far with this line getting to 21. Indiana State is a very up-tempo team that can put up a lot of points in a hurry, but like what I'm seeing out of this Valparaiso team, and this is an Indiana State team that is well outside the top 75 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, Valparaiso, they themselves have allowed at least 75 in 4 out of their last 5 games. So did set my line at a 20 here at 21. Going to be taking a look at the points with Valparaiso. I made my total 154, so you're at the 153 to 153.5. Also looking over 677, 678 on the betting board. Mercer plays us Furman. Furman is a 2.5 point favorite, seeing a 3 out there as well. Total is 144. I did set Furman as a favorite of 6.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay this number. It's a Mercer team that has not really done one thing great, but they're really not having one true weakness as well. They're a very unique team, and then they do a nice job of having Jalen McCrary really set the table for this team. About 15 points, 5 rebounds per contest. Mercer outside the top 200 with regards to both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. They're right around about 200th with regards to the rebound rate. They turn the ball over a little bit, but it's not unsightly with about 11.9 turnovers per game. They're not horrible, but they're not amazing, shooting 33.5% from 3-point range. They're very milquetoast, for lack of a better term, with regards to this team. Robbie Carmody Moody, David Thomas. They've been able to combine for about 16 points per contest, shooting a combined about 36% from three-point range, but could use a little bit more help to be able to aid McCurry. Meanwhile, this Furman team lost to non-Division I Anderson a little bit earlier on in the season, but ever since they've gone back Marcus Foster, their top scorer, supplying 20 points, 7.5 boards on 34% three-point shooting, this team has been completely transformed, and it has been a completely different team. As for Mr. Foster, he has been back in the fold for now 6 games, and in those 6 games, this team has actually been able to do a significantly better job on defense. They have now allowed 70 points or fewer in regulation because the Citadel game went to overtime, so 72 points or fewer in regulation in 4 out of these 6 games for a Furman team as well. It's at the top 225 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and now you've got a little bit more three-point shooting with Foster back to the fold as well. Being able to supply the team with 19.5 points, shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range. J.P. Peaks has been able to give you about 5 assists, 17 points per game. Biggest thing for Furman is ball security, as the team has been turning the ball over about 12.7 times per contest, but it's not like they go up against a Mercer team as looking to just absolutely rip the ball away. This Mercer team has been able to generate about 7.3 steals per contest, and to the credit of this Mercer bunch, defense has been pretty solid recently. They have given up 70 points or fewer in each of their last 4 games. Mercer well outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game. Furman, meanwhile, this is a team that's looking to bust up the tempo a little bit more, and Furman has been much better at home rather than in a roadside-shoot-corner environment. Furman about 184th with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage, and falls to 31% at home in a roadside-shoot-corner environment, more around 35.5%. Meanwhile, for Furman, with regards to raw points allowed on a per possession basis, they are giving up 8 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're at home rather than in a roadside shoot-court environment. So I do think that for Mercer, they are going to have a little bit of a tough time with this one. Furman, they do give up their threes when they're on the road, so I do think that that's going to lead to a little bit more scoring in this spot. I did set my total at a 146.5, so I'm going to be taking a look at this total over, but I do think that for Furman, a team that has really been able to get their offense going ever since they got their main man Foster back to the fold, and this is a Furman team that they themselves, in terms of their offense, they don't experience too much of a drop-off when they do hit the road. They're scoring about 7.5 points fewer per 100 possessions when they leave home. They're a top 85 team with regards to points scored on a per possession basis and playing quite up-tempo that they do just enough to be able to get it done. And I could see some late-game fouling happening in this one as well. So I did set my total at a 146.5 looking over, and one to lay up to 6 with Furman. 679, 680 on the betting board. Western Carolina plays us to the Citadel. The Citadel is an underdog of 11 points, so I made the Citadel an underdog of 9 points. So I'm going to be looking to take the points with the Citadel. Do fully recognize that Western Carolina is going to have by far the best player in this game, Vontravious Woolbright, who he has just been absolutely incredible. 22.5 points, nearly 12.5 boards. He ranks in the top 5 nationally in terms of both points and rebounds, while giving up 5.5 assists per contest. The only thing that he doesn't do is shoot threes. But for the Citadel, I do think that this team is going to do a solid job of being able to play relatively even up on the glass. The Vanderbilt transfer and Quentin Malora Brown has really been able to elevate this team. Now, they do go up against the Western Carolina team that is 66th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Citadel more around 113th, but this team has traveled relatively well. They've got a positive rebound rate when they are away from home, and out of your top 4 scorers, every one of them does give you at least 4 rebounds per game, including A.J. Smith along with Elijah Morgan, who have been able to combine for 31 points per contest. Morgan shoots 41.5% from three-point range for the Citadel. The 12 turnovers per contest, considering this has been a team that's been outside the top 225 with regards to total possessions per game. You'd like to see them slim down on that a little bit, but Western Carolina is one of the lesser teams in all of college basketball being able to generate turnovers in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis while outside the top 250. And for Western Carolina, this team can be had from three-point range at home. At home, they are allowing opponents to shoot 39.7% from three-point range. That is a bottom 20 mark in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, for the Citadel, they can from time to time give up some threes, but they actually allow opponents to shoot 33.1% from distance in a roadside shoot-corner environment compared to about 34% from three-point range when they're at home. You've got on the flip side Russell Jones, DJ Campbell, Trey Jackson for this Western Carolina team that have all been Robins to the Batman that is Woolbright. These 3 guys did a nice job being able to combine for about 39 points per contest with Campbell and Jones both shooting 42% from three-point range. And for Western Carolina, the 10 turnovers per contest, that's a top 40 mark with regards to ball security in all of college basketball, but it's a very top-heavy team. Outside of your main four scorers, you've only got one other guy that gives you north of 3.5 points per game. You don't get a lot of rebounding outside of Woolbright as well. So I do think that a Citadel team that has been a little bit up and down recently, but all in all has been able to do a relatively solid job holding up on defense, giving up 72 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. Going to be able to hold in there against a Western Carolina team that has now lost 4 out of their last 5 games, and they themselves have lost themselves on defense, giving up at least 77 points each of their last 4 games. So I do think that the Citadel going to look to control this game, play things a little bit more slowly. So I did set my total at a 137. I am going to be taking a look at this total under, and with regards to the Citadel, won't take anything of 9.5 or more with them. 681, 682 on the betting board. Marshall hits the road to face off against Troy. The Trojans of Troy are a 7.5 point favorite. Your total is 152.5. I did set Troy as a favorite 10 points. So I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Troy has been one of your best cover 8 teams in all of college basketball. They are covering, depending upon your closing number, right around about 2/3 of their games as far this season. And for Troy, I do think that they're going to be able to keep it up with their offense. They have gotten to at least 78 points each of their last 4 games, and really like what Christian Eugene is able to do in the backcourt, supplying the team with about 16 points per contest. Does have some help, by the way, from Tate Connerway. Connerway shooting in the mid-30s from 3, 11.5 points, 2.5 assists, 1.5 steals per contest, but Eugene can go into flamethrower mode from 3-point range, shooting at a clip of about 43% from 3-point range. And then when it comes to this Troy defense, it's quite a bit under the radar because they have been a team that has a lot of made threes. For Troy, they are 316th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Much of this is because this is one of those programs that is going to gamble for turnovers. Troy is about 55th in all of college basketball with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but they're just a little bit of a different animal when they're at home. At home, Troy is a top 45 team in all of college basketball with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and the good news for them is that they get to go up against a Marshall team that has been relatively atrocious with their 3-point shooting. You've got Onchile Obiana Killian, who's been able to shoot about 35% from 3-point range, 16 points, 7 boards. He's got good versatility, but Marshall as a whole, they shoot less than 32.5% from 3-point range. Now, to the credit of Marshall, not a bad 3-point shooting defense, 180th in all of college basketball. They allow opponents to shoot 34.5% from 3-point range at home, closer to about 32.8% in a roadside court environment, and his team is going to be able to do a solid job of holding their own down low. Nate Martin has already got to his credit quite a few double-doubles, and I think that he had a triple-double in that game against Old Dominion. For Martin, he's been able to supply 11.5 points, 9.5 boards, 3 assists, block and a half per contest. But Camden Kerfman, though he is giving you double figures, he's shooting in the low 30s from 3-point range. Big reason why this Marshall team is well outside the top 225 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. Marshall, not great, not terrible on the glass, about 143rd with regards to their rebound rate. And despite the fact that this Troy team really doesn't have that one supreme rebounder, Thomas Dowd is leading the way with 5.3 rebounds per game. This Troy team is actually in the top 55 nationally with regards to their rebound rate. They do a nice job cleaning up the glass. You've got so many nice ancillary pieces like an Amir Muhammad who's able to give you 10.5 points, throws in there about 2.5 assists, 3.5 boards, just does a little bit of everything. I do think that Troy going to be able to get it done against a Marshall team that they've had their issues recently, losing twice to Old Dominion in the span of about 2.5 weeks. That's a little bit less than impressive. The defense has actually been able to do quite a stifling job as they have now given up 74 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. You just don't know what you're going to be able to get out of this offense. Meanwhile, this is a Troy team that they themselves have held 3 of their last 5 opponents to 65 points or fewer. So, interesting spot here, especially with Marshall being still a top 40 team in the country with regards to total possessions per game. So, I did set my total at a 154. I do think that this Marshall team is going to be leaking a little bit of oil, and Troy is a team that gives up quite a few made threes. So, going to be taking a look at the over, but with Troy, made them the 10-point favorite. So, want to lay with Troy, and going to be taking a look at this total over as well. 683, 684 on the betting board. George Mason plays us to Loyola Chicago. Loyola Chicago, an underdog of 4 to 4.9 points. Don't lost the game between 136 and 136.5. I said George Mason as a 4-point favorite. At the 4.5, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Loyola Chicago. Loyola Chicago is one of those very interesting teams in that they just do not generate second chances to save their lives. They are terrible on the offensive glass. They don't have a single guy that really gives you north of 5 rebounds per game, but this team does a good job of not allowing you to be able to get any second chances as well. And for Loyola Chicago, they are 26th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Granted, they are giving up 18.3 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home, but that's pretty rock solid mark going up against a George Mason team that is more around 117th with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and a George Mason team that is ranking outside the top 3 with regards to total possessions per game. So I do think that we see quite a bit of slowdown in this spot, so I am going to be willing to take the points. When it comes to what you're able to get 3-point shooting defense-wise from Loyola Chicago, this has been a team that has been getting torched from 3-point range. Loyola Chicago, 266th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage in a roadside short court environment. Opponents do shoot about 39% from the outside against them, and you do take a look at George Mason, they've been having their issues on this front as well. 259th in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, so even though you do have a relatively low and slow game, both of these teams should be able to hit some threes, as George Mason as a whole, they do shoot 35% from the outside. Got a pair of guys in Amari Kelly, Darius Maddox, who shoot north of 40% from 3, combined for about 26 points per contest, and then Keyshawn Hall is able to really control things down low for George Mason. 8.5 boards, 17 points per game. Meanwhile, you've got a Loyola Chicago team that they're not going to give you any shot blocks or anything like that, but they've got really good versatility, shooting 35.5% from 3 with, out of their top 5 scorers, 4 of them shooting at least 40% from 3-point range. Main headliner, Braden Norris, 4.6 assists and 2 turnovers on 44.5% 3-point shooting and 9 points per contest. Desmond Watson, Philip Olsen, they both been able to do a relatively solid job with about 28 points per contest as well. Big key for Loyola Chicago, cutting down on those turnovers as they've been turning the ball over a little bit north of 13 times per contest. George Mason, a relatively league average team with regards to turnovers committed on a per possession basis, but good news for Loyola Chicago, they should be able to get quite a few clean possessions. George Mason just 260th in all of college basketball with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. This is a Loyola Chicago team that they themselves are outside the top 200 with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but if you look at just in a roadside short court environment, this is a top 150 team with regards to generating turnovers. So I do think that Loyola Chicago with their defense is going to be able to hold in there. Both of these teams are pretty atrocious at guarding the arc, but both of these teams, relatively slow teams. Both of these teams do have good fortes in terms of not allowing you to get second chances. So did somebody total 136. You're at the 136 half, looking under, and at north of 4, taking the points with Loyola Chicago. 685, 686 on the betting board. It is Davidson on the road facing off against Duquesne. Duquesne is a 5 to 5.5 point favorite. The last game is 136 half. I did set Duquesne as a favorite of 7 points. So here at the 5.5, I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Now it's a Duquesne team that is very strange to take a look at because they're a very top-heavy bunch. You've got 2 guys in Jimmy Clark, along Dede Grant, who have done pretty much the bulk of the work in terms of being able to supply the team with offense. These 2 guys, they combined about 33.5 points per contest, while nobody else on the roster gives you north of 7.1 points per game. You do get a little bit of rebounding, as you've been able to get about 5.5 rebounds per game out of Fusani Drame. David Dixon has been able to give you about 5 boards per contest, but in terms of actual scoring, these are your main 2 guys, as Duquesne, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, is about 193rd in all of college basketball. And very fascinatingly for Duquesne, they're actually averaging 5 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot court environment. And they do go up against a Davidson team that is 86th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but they do see a fall of about 12.1 points fewer scored per 100 possessions when they do leave home. And this is a Davidson team that they have been all sorts of ghastly in terms of their defense. Davidson outside the top 320 with regards to total possessions per game, 251st in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. But for Davidson, even though the offense takes a fall off when they are away from home, they're giving up 3 points fewer in a roadside short court environment rather than at home. And they do have Grant Huffman, who's able to do it all. 5 boards, 5 assists, 14 points per game for a Davidson team that they only do turn the ball over about 10.5 times per contest. Much of that a byproduct of their very slow and controlled style, but for Davidson, you really don't have a ton down low. Not that this has been a Duquesne team that has gotten just absolutely massive work down low. Andrei Savrasov being out with injury has been hurting this team quite a bit, but for Davidson, they're about 177th in the country with regards to rebound rate. Duquesne, they're about 197th in the country, but when it comes to this Davidson team, they really don't do a great job of being able to supply themselves with second chances, and this Davidson team just does not do a good job in general being able to generate some turnovers. You've gotten some relatively good production out of Reed Bailey, who's able to give you about 5 boards, 11 points per contest, but I do think that for Duquesne, they're starting to find their sea legs. This Duquesne Duquesne team has been very good with regards to their defense as well recently. This team has now given up 72 points or fewer in each out of their last 9 games. I do think that they're going to be able to hold up on that side of things. As for Duquesne, it's been a little bit rough for them on offense, and they get to go up against a Davidson team that's been having all sorts of issues being able to guard inside the arc and outside the arc. I did set my total at a 139. Here at the 136 half, I am going to be taking a look at the over. Even though Davidson is a slow team, and even though Duquesne has been solid with their defense, this is a Davidson team that is truly giving it up on the defensive side of things, and I do think that they're going to have a rough time in this regard, so I'm going to be taking a look at this total over. And with regards to Duquesne, willing to lay up to 7 points with them, set them as a 7-point favorite, 687, 688 on the betting board. Michigan plays us Wisconsin. Wisconsin, a road favorite of between 5 and 5.5 points. The last game between 143.5 and 145. I did set my total at 145, mostly seeing 143.5 out there. I am going to be taking a look at the over, and I'm going to lay it with Wisconsin. I did set Wisconsin as a favorite of 7 points. This Badgers team has been able to do a really nice job of being able to hit the glass. A top 35 team in terms of rebound rate. Tyler Wall, Stephen Krull doing a tremendous job in tandem of being able to give you about 12.5 to 13 rebounds per game. And Krull is still shooting well over 45% from three-point range, going up against a Michigan team that has been getting just absolutely gashed in terms of their defense. They are going to have Doug McDaniel, Michigan is, in this one. His suspension is only for road games. Once again, I have absolutely no idea why that is, but that said, it's not like he's been able to do a lot in terms of this team's defense. Michigan, 315th in all of college basketball. Their guards points allowed on a per possession basis, and they're only giving up about 3.5 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. This is a Wisconsin team that they've got some interesting home and road splits in that they only give up about 3.5 points more per 100 possessions when they do leave home rather than when they are at home. And for Wisconsin, they're still well outside the top 315 with regards to total possessions per game, but they've been playing quite a few overs because with Wisconsin, they're a top 35 team with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. They are about 144th, though, with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. Wisconsin doing a good job taking care of the ball, top 40 team with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis. If you have Max Kleesman, he's been able to shoot 42% from 3, supplying the team with 10 points per contest. Connor Seton has had a little bit of a season to forget after last year. He was so good, but now has been able to give the team a little bit more with about a combined 17 points in the last 3 games. John Blackwell shooting 50% from 3-point range as well, and I do think that that should be enough against a Michigan team that they should be able to do a solid job on the glass. You've been able to have Olivier Kamwa, Alon Terrace Reed Jr., be able to combine for about 14 rebounds per game. Kamwa is able to shoot 35% from the outside, but for Michigan, mental mistakes going to be very costly for this team. They're one of the worst teams in all of college basketball generating turnovers. They themselves turn the ball over 13 times per contest, and Nabari Burnett, he averages about 9.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game, but he could give you a 25 one night and then 0 the next. You just don't know what you're going to be able to get out of him. Having Doug McDaniel at his 5 assists, 17 points per contest is obviously a nice booster, but it does typically hurt this defense quite a bit. In the last 5 games that he's been out there on the floor, this team has given up at least 79 points in 3 of them. Meanwhile, the offense has been a little bit sporadic as well, scoring 73 points or fewer in 4 of the last 5 games that McDaniel has been out there, but I do think that Wisconsin going to be able to take it to a Michigan team that has been one of your worst in all of college basketball, being able to guard the arc in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. This Michigan team is currently 303rd in all of college basketball. Wisconsin should be able to torch that, while Wisconsin, they themselves outside the top 225 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. So, my total 145, you're at the 143.5, win over, and we'll lay up to 6.5 with Wisconsin, 689, 690 on the betting board. Xavier is going to be playing us to Villanova. The X-Men do find themselves as a favorite of 3 to 3.5 points. Totals between 144.5 and 145. I did set Xavier as a 3-point favorite. 3.5 is my buy point on Villanova. You may recall these two teams played a few weeks ago, and it looked like Villanova was going to run and hide with that game. And then for Villanova, I believe that they had scored 1 point in a 6-minute span late in the second half that made it very much nip and tuck. I do think that order is going to be restored here by Villanova, but I don't know if it's going to be enough for them to be able to get this outright win. You've got a Villanova team that has some nice versatility. Tyler Burton along with Eric Dixon have done a solid job being able to supply the team with about 13.5 rebounds per game down low. Dixon supplies 16 points, shoots 36.5% from 3-point range, but For Villanova, for the last few years, their main kryptonite has been giving up the three ball. For Villanova, they do allow opponents to shoot about 33% from three-point range. They've been able to work on that quite a bit more. At the beginning part of the year, it was rather ghastly. This time of year, it's been a little bit better, and they actually allow opponents to shoot only 32% from distance in a roadside shoot-court environment compared to more like 33.8% from three-point range when they are at home. But now you're dealing with a Xavier team that they've been able to crank it up with their offense. For Xavier, it took them a little bit of time to get going. They had to replace pretty much 5 out of their top 6 scorers from a season ago, but this team has been much better at home rather than on the road. Xavier is giving you 9.8 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot-court environment, and Quincy Alveri has become a go-to scorer. 19 points, 5 boards, shooting 45.5% from three-point range. For a Xavier team that they're a little bit above average with their three-point shooting percentage. They're shooting about 35% from the outside, but now you've been able to get quite a bit more on the glass. Abdul Usman, 6.5 boards, a little bit over a block per contest. That helps out a Xavier team that last season they were all offense, really not a lot of defense. And for the Xavier team, do they still have a little bit of work to be done on defense? Yes, but they are giving up about 2.1 points fewer per 100 possessions this season rather than a season ago. They're about 118th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And they face off against a Villanova team that's only about 116th in the country with regards to rebound rate. Xavier is 75th with having Gatis Namasika, who's been able to give you 6.5 points, 5 boards, shooting 39% from three-point range. And with Xavier playing relatively up-tempo, only turned the ball over 11.5 times per contest, I do think that they should get some good, crisp, clean offense. And ever since these two teams matched up, Xavier, 78-plus points in 4 of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, it's a Villanova team in which the defense has been there for them. They have now given up 70 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games in regulation since that Butler game went to double overtime. The offense just has not been able to get going. I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a slog, much like we saw the first time around, so I did set my total 143, diving in on the under. I do think they get another nip-and-tuck game since Xavier is a 3-point favorite, so at 3.5, take the points with Villanova and going to be taking a look at this total under 691, 692 on the betting board. Tennessee plays also LSU. LSU is a 14.5-point underdog. Total on this game, 153.5. Set my line at a 14. I'm seeing a 15 pop up as well. I'm going to be willing to take the points with LSU. Certainly, I do think that Tennessee is a better team in this one. We were talking about them with Blake Lovell. I do think that the 92 points that we saw Tennessee give up, that was a little bit of a byproduct of just facing off against a Kentucky team that they're able to put up points at Rupp Arena against darn near anyone, as Tennessee still about a top 40 team in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. Typically you get one and not the other, but they've been a relatively balanced team thus far this season. They really do feed off of being at home with regards to their defense. For Tennessee, 18th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and they're giving up about 17.3 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot-court environment. But it's an LSU team that they're not doing bad on the glass. They're a top 100 team with regards to their rebound rate. They're about 95th with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. Granted, it is an LSU team that's giving up about 14.6 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home. But by committee, this team has done a nice job of being able to hit the glass. Now they've also got more facilitation in the backcourt with Jarius Cook in the fold, giving you 15.5 points. Was out the first 10 games of the season, being a 2-time transfer, but stealing half per contest. He's been able to do a nice job helping out a backcourt that has been really headlined by Jordan Wright, who has been Mr. Wright. 5 boards, 15.5 points, 3 assists, shooting 36.5% from three-point range for an LSU team in which the offense has been there for them recently, scoring at least 88 points in 3 of their last 5 games. Defense leaving something to be desired. They've given up at least 74 in 4 of their last 5 games, but I do think that a Tennessee team that prior to that game against Kentucky was really starting to bear down, starting to bat down the hatches. They have given up 71 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games, including that Kentucky game. I do think that they are going to be able to get this game played a little bit more slowly. You've got Dalton Knecht. You know what to expect there. 28 points per game on 39% three-point shooting for a bunch that they do a nice job of being efficient. 10.5 turnovers per game. Zakai Ziegler, 5.5 assists, 1.7 steals, only turns the ball over about 2.2 times per contest. You still have so many guys like a Santiago Vescovi that do a solid job, and then Jonas Adu, he's able to do a nice job hitting the glass, give you about 7 rebounds per contest. But I do think that for LSU, the way that Wright and Cook have been able to perform in the backcourt is going to be able to keep this team rather lively. I do think that with Tennessee, you could see a little bit of a letdown spot after that big win on the road against Kentucky as well. So I did set this line at a 14 here, at 14.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points, and did set my total at 150. I do think that you still get quite a few points from Tennessee, but I do feel like Tennessee is going to be able to get back to their roots defensively. So looking at the under and looking at the points with LSU, 693, 694 on the betting board. Auburn plays us at Alabama. Alabama finds themselves as a underdog of 4.5 to 5.5 points. So on this game, it's 163. I see a very similar game to what we got the first time around when these two teams played. That was Alabama winning on their home floor by 4 points. I said Auburn as a 4-point favorite. Now that we're getting to 5.5, seeing a lot of 5s out there, I'm going to be willing to take the points. This was an opener of 4, which I thought was relatively correct. And for this Auburn team, you've got really good balance with this team. You don't necessarily have that one super duper forte with them, but when it comes to Auburn, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, this team is number 6 in all of college basketball because they do a nice job on the glass with G&I Broom. Meanwhile, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, this team is 16th. Meanwhile, Alabama's an all gas, no breaks team. Alabama number 1 in the country. In terms of points scored on a per possession basis, 142nd in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And for Alabama, they are giving up 16.5 points more per 100 possessions when they do leave home rather than when they are at home. So that's going to be a little bit of a concern for them. It's a big reason why I did set my total more around about at 162. Last time these two teams played, neither team was able to get to 80. I do think that you get a little bit of hotter shooting in this one, and I could very easily see this being a game that comes down to late game felling as well. But for Auburn, it's not like they're an amazing three-point shooting team. Blake Lovell was mentioning this in the interview. They're shooting about 33.5% from 3. You do have Jalen Williams along with Chad Baker-Mazara combining to be able to shoot about 40% from 3, 22.5 points per contest between the two of them. So they're clearly a better three-point shooting team than they were a season ago. A season ago, this was one of the most rough three-point shooting teams in all of college basketball, but a lot of their offense has been being able to float things down low with G&I Broom. A lot of their offense has been just being very consistent, not turning the ball over, doing those little things. So I do think that that is going to be very important for them in this one. Meanwhile, you've got on the flip side an Alabama team that has Mark Sears, who's able to give you 20-plus points per contest, and he's got a lot of help in the backcourt as he, along with Aaron Eck and Estrada, are both able to give you about 4 assists per contest. Estrada shoots about 35% from three-point range. With Mark Sears, he's been able to shoot in that neighborhood about 44.5% from the outside. Meanwhile, Rylan Griffin has come on. He's been able to give you about 10.5 points per contest. You've got a low post presence for Alabama in Grant Nelson, who's able to stretch to the floor, pop a few threes. And for Alabama, this is a top 40 team with regards to rebound rate, despite the fact that Nelson is really the only guy that gives you north of 5.5 rebounds per game. In the end, I do think that Auburn gets their revenge, but I think that this is just like what we saw the first time around. A relatively nip and tuck game where both teams, they approach 80. One probably gets to 80, and one probably does not. I set my line at a 162 for this total, so at the 163, diving under, and north of 4, take the points with Alabama. 695, 696 on the betting board. Fort Wayne plays us to Cleveland State, and Cleveland State is a underdog of 3.5 points. Hold on, this game 151 after 152. I did set Fort Wayne as a 3.5 point favorite. So we're going to take a look to see what sort of movement we do get with regards to this line. I was seeing a few threes out there before, and if we can get down to a 3 or less, I'd be willing to lay it with Fort Wayne. Fort Wayne has been a relatively solid defense this season, a top 95 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and the one thing that Fort Wayne is going to be able to do defensively is take away the arc from you. As for this IPFW AK Fort Wayne team, they're allowing opponents to shoot less than 32% from three-point range, 52nd in all of college basketball in that regard, and at home, opponents only shoot about 28.5% from three-point range against them. Meanwhile, Cleveland State, they're one of those teams that they don't necessarily do one thing amazing aside from maybe generate turnovers. They're a top 60 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but Cleveland State, 91st in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. You do have that main go-to guy in Tristan Enaruna, who's been Mr. Do-It-All. He's been able to give you 16 points, 6 boards, 3 assists, about a steal and a half per contest. Really like his overall game, but you've got really good support around him. And Enaruna, by the way, actually up to 19 points per contest. Big reason why he went into flamethrower mode the last 4 games with 23-plus points in each of the last 4 games. Prior to that, he had been a little bit cold, so he comes in being able to really stroke the ball. But you've got Drew Lauder, Tate Williams, both giving you combined about 24.5 points per contest. With Lauder, he's able to shoot 35.5% from 3, and Cleveland State, they do shoot 36% from 3. Now, you do have to have a little bit of trepidation with taking the points with Cleveland State in this one because they do shoot just 66.2% at the free throw line. In a nip and tuck game, that could be the difference, and you do have a Cleveland State team that has to match up with the Fort Wayne bunch that has been relatively solid with their three-point shooting percentage. You've got Jalen Jackson, Quentin Morton Robinson. These two guys combined for about 29 points per contest. Morton Robinson shoots 41% from 3. Jackson shoots 46% from 3. And though he doesn't shoot it well from distance, Rasheed Bella has done a nice job being able to distribute the ball. 15 points, 4 assists, 2 steals. This is a Fort Wayne team that, with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis, is a top 50 team in all of college basketball taking care of the ball. Now, where this Fort Wayne team is going to come up short. They are outside the top 240 with regards to rebound rate. This Cleveland State team, though, they themselves are outside the top 200 with regards to their rebound rate as well. So a good spot in my opinion for Fort Wayne if you could get them at a 3 or less. I set my line at 3.5, seeing a lot of 3.5s out there, so a little bit of wait and see mode. 4 or more would be my buy point on Cleveland State. And with this Fort Wayne team, they are a top 40 team with regards to total possessions per game, while Cleveland State is pretty solid with regards to their defense. Not like they're a supreme team with regards to their defense. Turns points allowed on a per possession basis. Turns 60th in all of college basketball, giving up about 10.4 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. So I do think that you get enough scoring for an over, set my total 153.5, so going at the over, 3 or less, 1 to lay with Fort Wayne, 4 more to get the points with Cleveland State, 697, 698 on the betting board. St. Bonaventure plays us to UMass. UMass is an underdog of 4.5 points, totals between 146.5 and 147, and with UMass, I did set them as an underdog of 3 points. So here at the 4.5, I'm going to be willing to take those points with UMass. This has been a top 75 team with regards to rebound rate, and they do a nice job of being able to get offensive rebounds. That allows them a lot of second chances, as this UMass team is a top 50 team nationally with regards to percentage of missed shots that do result in an offensive rebound. And now you've got the Twin Towers back up and running down low. That would be Matt Cross along Josh Cohen. Between these two guys, you're able to get 32.5 points, 15 rebounds, about 5 assists. Cross is able to give you about 2 steals per contest. Cohen is now shooting 38% from 3-point range. Now, for UMass, if there is a kryptonite with this team, they only shoot about 31.5% from 3, less than 70% at the free throw line. But this UMass team does a very good job of being able to lock it down from distance while being a top 50 team in all of college basketball. With regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, this is a UMass team that at home they allow opponents to shoot about 32.5% from 3. This does slip slide away from them, a little bit more away from home. They allow opponents to shoot about 36.8% from 3 in a roadside neutral court environment, but much of the times that they've gotten gashed is when Matt Cross has been off the floor. They are allowing opponents to shoot nearly 40% from 3-point range when Cross is off the floor versus when he's on the floor, so I do think that that's of big significance here. Meanwhile, this is a St. Bonaventure team that they've just been a rock in terms of their defense. They're in the top 60 nationally with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, though they allow opponents to shoot nearly 34% from 3-point range at home. That does fall to about 29.3% in a roadside neutral court environment. For the Bonnies, this team has allowed 72 points or fewer in regulation because they've had quite a few games that have gone to overtime. In all but 4 of them thus far this season, you've been able to have Chad Venning do a solid job down low, giving you about 14 points, 5 boards. Charles Pride has really been your main rebounder with about 7 boards per contest, so I do think that for the Bonnies, they're going to lose that battle down low, but at the same time, this is a Bonaventure team that they do a nice job of being able to flow some clean offense. They only turn the ball over about 10.5 times per contest. You've been able to get each out of your top 3 scorers that have made at least 1 3, so this takes Venning out of the fold. Being able to shoot at least 39% from 3-point range, Mike Adams-Woods, Charles Pride, Moses Flowers, they're feeling like Moses, a combined 35 points per contest. Pride to be able to chip in their 6 boards per game. And then you've got the gentleman formerly known as Jan Farrell, Asa Isa Vias, who's been a little bit of a disappointment, 7 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. And for St. Bonaventure, it has been a little bit wobbly with this offense. It's a battle of tempos as well. UMass is a top 80 team with regards to possessions per game. St. Bonaventure, a bottom 75 team with regards to possessions per game. And this is a Bonaventure team that's been struggling a little bit with their offense. 71 points or fewer scored in 4 of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, this is a UMass team that, for the way that they play up tempo, 73 points or fewer surrender in 3 of their last 4 games, pretty solid. So I'm going to be willing to take the points with the UMass, set them as an underdog of 3.5 points. So you're at the 4.5, going to be taking that. And with regards to the total, I did set mine at a 145. St. Bonaventure has slowed games down all season long. So looking under and looking at the Minutemen, 699, 700 on the betting board. Louisiana Tech plays those to Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky, a 9.5 point underdog, total on scheme between 149 and 149.5. I did set Western Kentucky as an underdog of 9.5 points. I'm seeing a 10 out there. That 10 is my buy point on Western Kentucky. And for Western Kentucky, this team is playing at warp speed. They are in the top 75 nationally with regards to total possessions per game. And for Western Kentucky, they're starting to find a little bit more of a rhythm from the outside. Not a great 3-point shooting team at 34%, but if you look at them over the last 45 days, they are shooting above 37% from 3-point range, with the dominator, Dominic Henry, being able to shoot about 42% from 3-point range. He's really been able to put it together, and this Western Kentucky team has been able to do a solid job on the glass. They're not an amazing team by any stretch of the imagination, but you know what? This team is about 110th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Now, they are going to lose that battle to Louisiana Tech. You've got Daniel Bacho down low, who's been able to generate a double-double. He has been absolutely incredible for a Louisiana Tech team that is 24th with regards to rebound rate. And if you take a look at points allowed on a per possession basis, this this Louisiana Tech team, one of the best teams outside the Power 5 in all of college basketball. I mean, we don't even need to say that. They're just one of the best defenses in all of college basketball. They're 11th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. At home, they're giving up about 9.8 points fewer per 100 possessions rather than in a road/neutral court environment. But I do think that the way that this Western Kentucky team looks to play super duper up tempo, they've got a lot of versatile pieces that is going to take it out of this Louisiana Tech team just a little bit. And for Louisiana Tech, this team can be a little bit hit or miss with regards to their offense. They turn the ball over 12.5 times per contest, so they've got some good three-point shooting. As you've got Talik Chavez, Isaiah Crawford, both shooting about 42.5% from three-point range, combining for about 26 points per contest. But after that, you do have a bit of a drop-off. You need guys like Drayvon Magnum. You need someone like a Sean Newman. These guys give you like 5, 6, 7 points per contest to be able to step up a little bit more for Western Kentucky. This defense has been a bit all over the place, as in their last 5 games, they've given up 72, 93, 91, 79, and 65 points. But that said, this is a Louisiana Tech team that I just don't know if they generate enough offense to be able to get the job done in this one. They've given up fewer than 60 points in 4 of their last 5 games, so I do think that they are going to be able to provide a nice speed bump for Western Kentucky. So I did set my total at 147.5, looking at the under, but here at 10 plus, I just don't know if Louisiana Tech is able to win by margin enough to be able to cover this number. So we'll take the 10 with Western Kentucky and the under 701, 702 on the betting board. NC State plays us at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is an underdog of 3 to 3.5 points. So on this game between 141 and 142.5. And with this Pittsburgh bunch, I did set them as an underdog of 2.5 points. Here at the 3 plus, I'm going to be willing to take these points. Pittsburgh has been one of your best defenses in all of college basketball this season, a top 35 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. The offense can be very inconsistent, and this is a Pittsburgh team that they do experience quite a bit of a drop-off with regards to that offense when they do hit the road. Pittsburgh overall for the season, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, 61st in all of college basketball, but they've been able to remain relatively consistent because they've gotten really good production out of Blake Hinson. Hinson has been able to give you 18 points per contest, and as a result, because out of conference it was a little bit wobbly for Pittsburgh when they hit the road with regards to their offense, they're now only averaging a half a point less per 100 possessions in a roadside-neutral court environment rather than at home, with Hinson shooting 42% from three-point range. And the reason why Pittsburgh has been such a good defensive team, they rebound by committee. Out of your top 7 scorers, 6 of them give you north of 4 boards per contest. You don't really have anyone that gives you north of 5.5 rebounds per game. As a matter of fact, Ishmael Leggett, who's a guard, is actually leading the way with regards to the rebounds in terms of 5.4 boards per contest. But you've got someone like a Frederico who's able to give you a block and a half per contest. The Diaz Graham brothers have been able to step up from time to time. They're able to give you a little bit of versatility. In terms of the overall rebound rate for this Pittsburgh team, they're 47th in all of college basketball. And they go up against an NC State team as 240th with this regard. DJ Turner Burns has been able to give you about 4.5 rebounds per game. Mohamed Diarra is the only guy in the roster that really gives you north of 5.5 rebounds per game. And for NC State, they only shoot about 33% from three-point range. DJ Turner Horn has been able to give you 42% three-point shooting with 15.5 points per contest. He is the only guy that is registering north of 3 points per contest that is shooting north of 33% from three-point range. You do have LJ Thomas, who's able to shoot about 57% from the outside, but he's averaging 2.5 points per contest and has been in and out of the fold all season long. So that's been a little bit of an issue. It's an NC State team that does a good job of being able to take care of the ball. They're a top 20 team in all of college basketball with regards to fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. But for this Pittsburgh team, they're allowing opponents to shoot just 29.4% from three-point range in a roadside shoot court environment. NC State, they are 222nd in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. I do think that Pittsburgh is able to remain lively in this one. I think that this could be a game that's going to be close enough for some late game fouling as well. I do think that NC State, with the way that they don't turn the ball over, with the way that you do have someone like a Casey Marcel being able to put the biscuit in the basket, and NC State is a relatively mid-tempo team. I do think that this total is just a scotch too low. I did set my line at a 144.5, so looking at the 142.5 over, but with NC State, going to make them a 2.5 point favorite. I'd like Pittsburgh to be able to get a lot of second chances on the glass. Going to be taking a look at the points with Pittsburgh to go along the total over. Now we have my DK Network right to pick 703, 704 on the betting board. Syracuse plays us at Louisville. Louisville's an underdog of 10 points. On this game between 153.5 and 154. I did set Syracuse as an 11.5 point favorite. I am going to be willing to lay this number. With regards to write up though, I am actually going to be taking a look at this total under. I did set my total at a 149.5. It's a Louisville team outside the top 210 with regards to taking care of the ball in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. This is a Louisville team that all season long they've had a lot of inconsistency with regards to their three-point shooting as well. This is a Louisville team that they are shooting about 30.8% from three-point range. That ranks 302nd in all of college basketball. Going up against the Syracuse team that they've been much better at being able to guard the arc this season than when they were playing the 2-3 zone. They're about 130th with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage, but that goes down to about 31.5% at home. And for Syracuse, the one thing that this team has really been able to do a nice job of is generating turnovers. They are 35th in all of college basketball with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. You've also got a Louisville team that, while they stink on defense, they are 294th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. They really don't experience too much of drop-off when they're away from home. They're only giving up 0.8 points more per 100 possessions in a road/neutral court environment rather than at home. So while they're 294th overall with regards to their defense, they're more around 268th with regards to points allowed per possession in a road/neutral court environment. And they go up against a Syracuse team that has had a really tough time just being able to put the ball in the basket. 246th in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Now, Syracuse is looking to run 50th in the country with regards to total possessions per game, but this has been a Syracuse team that you have to question whether or not they're going to be able to do their part with regards to the total as well. It is a Syracuse team that they have now scored 75 points or fewer in all but one of their games since the beginning of the month of January. So this bunch has not necessarily been too hot with that regard. You do have Judah Mintz, J.J. Starlin. These two guys been able to combine for about 31 points per contest, but they're both shooting about 33% from three. Syracuse as a whole, they shoot 32.5% from distance. And for Syracuse, this is a team with a negative rebound rate. The Syracuse team is about 294th in all of college basketball with regards to offensive rebound percentage, grabbing just 23.3% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. Meanwhile, Louisville, when they're away from home, they do not get second chances. 322nd in the country with regards to percentage of missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. They're only grabbing 20.8% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. You do have Brandon Hundley-Hatfield, who's able to give you 8.5 boards, 11.5 points per contest, but it's all up to Sky Clark and Mikey James to be able to develop offense for Louisville. James has been able to shoot about 36.5% from three, was very hot in early January, has cooled off a little bit. Sky Clark, he's been turning the ball over 3 times per contest, gives you about 13 points, 3 assists per contest. He's been okay, but he hasn't been great. And then Trey White, it's been a little bit in and out of the fold. He's come back and has been incredibly inconsistent over his last 4 games. 9, 10, 29, and 0 points in his last 4 games. So you just don't know what you're going to be able to get out of him from time to time. They've dealt with the injury to J.J. Traynor all season long as well. So I take a look at the spot for Louisville, and I do think that they're going to have a tough time just handling the Syracuse team, one that has been quite a bit better when they've been at home rather than on the road with regards to their defense, giving up about 12.3 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're at home. Neither of these teams are going to be able to generate second chances, and I do think that this is going to be a sloppy game with quite a few turnovers. So my write-up pick is going to be on the under in this game, set my total at 149.5, and with Syracuse made them an 11.5 point favorite. So 1 to lay the 10 with Syracuse, my write-up, that is on the under. 7-5, 7-6 on the betting board. Louisiana Monroe plays host to Coastal Carolina. Coastal Carolina does find themselves as an underdog of 5.5 points total on this game. It's 147.5, and with Coastal Carolina, I made them an underdog of 5 points. I'm going to be willing to take the 5.5 with them. Coastal Carolina has been having a brutal year all season long in terms of their defense. They're well outside the top 225 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. And for Louisiana Monroe, much to the surprise of myself, they've actually been a top 85 team with regards to their rebound rate. Big reason why is Jalen Bolden along Nika. Not even going to try to pronounce the long last name of Nika, so we're just going to call him Nika M, who have been able to combine for about 12 rebounds per game for Louisiana Monroe. Boy, this offense is brutal, though. They're outside the top 300 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. Louisiana Monroe outside the top 300 with regards to total possessions per 40 minutes, turning the ball over 13 times per contest, shooting 28.5% from three-point range. You've been able to get a little bit of three-point shooting out of Savion Gallen, who's able to give you 8 points, shooting about 37% from distance, but it's a brutal state of affairs. Tariq LaCour has been able to provide about 10 points per contest, while Tyrese Watson chips in their 9.5, and I just flat out think that Coastal Carolina has more firepower to be able to hold in this game, and though Coastal Carolina doesn't have quite the same rebound rate that Louisiana Monroe does, they've got the best low post presence in this game. That'd be Janika Ojiako, who's been able to give you 13 points, 10.5 boards per contest, chips in there a block per contest, and he's been able to do a really nice job of being able to man up on the glass recently. He's been able to give you at least 10 points in 4 out of the team's last 5 games. He's had a double-double in 3 out of the team's last 5 contests, and then you're able to get about 38.5% three-point shooting, along with 5 boards, 14 points out of Jacob Meyer as well. This Coastal Carolina team also turns the ball over 13 times per contest, but they play at a significantly more up-tempo pace. It's not not a good Coastal Carolina 3-point shooting team, but still at 30.2%, it's better than what you've got out of Louisiana Monroe. Both of these teams in the bottom 75, by the way, with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage, but having the versatility of someone like a Kevin Easley, who's able to give you 10 points, 5 rebounds per contest. Even with Jimmy Nichols being out of the fold, I do think that that's going to bode very well for a Coastal Carolina team that, it's been brutal with regards to their defense. They've given up 79 plus points at each of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, for Louisiana Monroe, credit where credit is due, though the offense has been brutal all season long. This team has now been able to get to at least 70 points at each of their last 6 games, but I do think that things get bogged down a little bit more here. I think that with both of these teams just not being able to shoot it from 3, both of these teams being very sloppy in terms of being able to take care of the ball, and neither team generating a lot of second chances on the glass while being able to hold opponents to one-and-done possessions. I do think that this lends itself to an under. I set my total at 145, so diving in on the under, and with the Louisiana Monroe backcourt just being very shaky in general, going to be willing to take 5.5 with Coastal Carolina, set them as a 5-point dog. 7-7, 7-8 on the betting board. Wichita State plays UT San Antonio. Meet for the Roadrunners. They are underdogs of 9 points. Total on this game, 157 to 157.5. Set my line at a 157. So at the hook on 157, I'm going to be taking a look at the under. It's a Wichita State team that certainly has some work to be done with regards to the defense. Wichita State, they're okay at regards to being able to guard the arc, about 169th in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, while UTSA, boy, are they getting cooked in a roadside shoot corner environment. Opponents are shooting 42.4% from 3-point range against them. I think a little bit of positivity is going to be coming through as they face off against a Wichita State team that does have some good top-end scoring, but overall, this is a team that has been relatively rough in terms of their offense. Kobe Rogers has been able to give you 16 points per contest. He shoots in the high 30s from 3-point range, but all in all, it's a Wichita State team that is shooting below 33% from 3-point range. Wichita State has also turned the ball over about 12.5 times per contest. As a matter of fact, outside of Rogers, you don't have a single other guy that generates north of 4.5 points per game that is shooting above 31.3% from 3-point range. So that absolutely terrible kryptonite of UTSA, that's not going to be unearthed too much in this one. Now for Wichita State, have a trio of guys who are able to give you at least 6 rebounds per game. Talon Original, Quincy Ballard, Kenny Poto. These guys have been able to do a nice job down low. And this is a Wichita State team that they don't necessarily emulate their coach in Paul Mills as much, who comes over from Oral Roberts, and that they've been a little bit better on the glass. They've been a little bit weaker out there in the backcourt. For Wichita State, they rank 85th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Meanwhile, for this UTSA team, they're more around 149th. You've got Carlton Lingard, who's a true 7-footer, who's able to give you about 6 boards, 10.5 points. He's able to let it fly to 34.5% clip from 3-point range. Christian Tucker has done a nice job in tandem with Jordan Ivy Curry of being able to generate some offense as well. And ever since Ivy Curry has gotten into the fold, if you take out his first 2 games where he was just trying to round into form, where he was just trying to sort out the kinks, for lack of a better term, this team has scored now 72 plus points in 9 out of their last 10 games. Meanwhile, this team has also given up at least 75 points in all but one of them as well. So this has been a rocket ship with regards to their offense. Ivy Curry, 19 points, 4 assists, 5.5 rebounds per game. Not a lick of defense, but a whole bunch of offense at a 39% 3-point shooting clip for a UTSA team that overall they are shooting about 34% from 3 at a warp speed of a top 30 mark with regards to total possessions per game. Only turned the ball over 11.2 times per contest as well. So it's a good old situation of something's got to give. Wichita State has been relatively okay with regards to their defense, not so great on offense. UTSA is playing no defense whatsoever, but they're relatively solid on offense. I do think that things seem down just a little bit in this one for UTSA. I did set my total 157, so you're at the 157.5, looking at the under. The opener on this game was 9.5, seeing 1 or 2 straight 9.5s, and personally, I would be taking a look at the 9.5 with UTSA, set my line at 9, so at 9.5 or more, taking the points with UTSA to go along with this total under. 7-9, 7-10 on the betting board. Old Dominion is hitting the road. They're facing off against Southern Miss, and Southern Miss does find themselves as a 5.5 point favorite, and your total on this game, it is 143.5 with Southern Miss. I did set them as a favorite of 7.5 points. So here with this line, I'm going to be willing to lay it with Southern Miss. I recognize that this team is still dealing with the injury to Andre Curbelo, but you still have some guys in the backcourt. They're able to do a relatively solid job. I do like the game of Donovan Ivory, who comes in from UW Green Bay. He's able to give you a double-figure amount of points, shoots in the high 30s from 3-point range for a Southern Miss defense that it's been brutal all season long. They're outside the top 225 with yards points allowed on a per possession basis, but without Andre Curbelo in it, this defense has been a whole heck of a lot better. Now, the offense offense has been a whole heck of a lot worse. Andre Cabello really elevated the offense. He was a little bit of a speed bump with regards to the defense. Actually, he's the opposite of a speed bump. He's like an accelerator for other teams' offense. But the Southern Miss team has now given up 63 points or fewer in 3 of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, they themselves have failed to get past the 72-point plateau in 4 of their last 5 games, going up against an Old Dominion team that has been wretched with regards to their defense. They have given up at least 76 points in each of their last 5 games. Old Dominion, typically a team that's pretty slow, pretty controlled, good on defense, not so great on offense. They are now outside the top 280 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but have Vishawn Alouette along Chauncey Jenkins combined for about 33 points per contest. Between the two of them, they're shooting about 35% from the outside. It's an Old Dominion team that really doesn't have any good low post presence as well. You've been able to have Alouette give you about 5.5 rebounds per game. Tyrone Williams is able to give you about 5.5 boards, 11.5 points per contest, but it's a relatively top-heavy team. RJ Blakeney, the transfer from Dayton, I was expecting more than the 8 points and 4 boards that he's been able to supply this team. You don't get a lot of turnovers when it comes to Old Dominion as well. If you look at Old Dominion's rebound rate, they're 327th in all of college basketball. Not that the Southern Miss team has been amazing with regards to their overall rebounding, but they're about 266th in all of college basketball. And you've got some nice rim presence when it comes to this team, as you've been able to have Vincent Iwakar, the transfer from UNLV, give you 2 blocks per contest. You get about a block per contest as well out of Tigra Izzi. Hopefully I said that correctly. He's been able to do a solid job down low as well for the Southern Miss team that still has Austin Crawley, being able to give you about 15.5 points per contest. Doesn't necessarily shoot it well from 3-point range, and though the Victor Hart injury has also been hurting the Southern Miss team, I did think that for Southern Miss, just having the low post presence that they do have, it's going to be enough to be able to get it done against an Old Dominion team that's just a shell of what they have been in past years. With this total, I set mine at a 145.5. Old Dominion just continues to bleed points at Southern Miss. They themselves have been less than efficient on defense, so looking at the under, and I'm going to be one up to 7 with Southern Miss, 7-11, 7-12 on the betting board. Bradley, it's the road face-off against Evansville. Purple Aces find themselves as 9-point home underdogs. Total on this game is 141 to 142. With Evansville, I did set them as an underdog of 8 points. I'm going to be one to take the points. Big reason why I'm willing to back Evansville here is because Ben Huma-Riches is back in the fold for this team, and that is by far their top scorer. Without Huma-Riches in the fold, Evansville was looking pretty rough, to say the least, but with Huma-Riches, last game out against Valparaiso, he saw 24 minutes. He had just 8 points. Previous game, he had 15 points in 16 minutes, so they were clearly trying to ease him back a little bit more. His full allotment is typically about 28 to 30 minutes per game. I think that he's going to be back there, as he's had a few days of rest up ever since that Valparaiso game. And for Huma-Riches, he's giving you 15 points, 5 boards, shooting 45% from 3-point range. And when he's out there on the court, Evansville is averaging more than 10 points more per 100 possessions versus when he's off the court. Meanwhile, you've got a Bradley team that this has been a team that has been an absolute bulldozer with regards to their defense in Missouri Valley Conference play. In games not involving Indiana State, because Indiana State is a completely different beast. They've given up 72 points or fewer in all but one of their Missouri Valley Conference games, and for this Bradley team, the offense has been able to come along for the ride as well. This is a Bradley team that's now in the top 50 nationally with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. Early on during the season, they returned the ball over a little bit too much. Now they've done a solid job being able to lock it down, as you've got Connor Hickman, who's able to give you about 14.5 points, 3 assists, shooting 40% from 3-point range, while the Duke Dean is able to shoot 38% from the outside, 4.3 assists to 1.7 turnovers per game. While Levy Leons is going to be a hard guard, 14.7 boards, 6'9" combo player that's able to shoot 36% from 3-point range. But this Evansville team, they do a relatively okay job of having Yusan Toomey be able to guard things down low. It doesn't necessarily give you a whole lot of shot blocking, as Huma-Riches also gives you a little bit over a block per contest, but 12 points, 6.5 boards. He's able to provide a little bit of a speed bump there. This is an Evansville team that they're going to give you some opportunities from 3-point range. Evansville, with regards to their opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, that's right around 234th in the country, but they allow opponents to shoot just 32% from 3-point range at home, 36.2% in a roadside shoot corner environment, going up against Bradley team that they are about 177th with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. They have actually been a little bit better with regards to guarding the arc on the road rather than at home. Opponents shoot 35% from 3 at home against them in a roadside shoot corner environment. That falls to about 32.5%. I do think that for Evansville, getting back Huma-Riches, that is just so big for an Evansville team that outside of him, Kenny Strawbridge really doesn't shoot it well from 3, despite the fact that he gives you double figures. That makes this offense a little bit more whole, and on top of that, it does elevate this Evansville defense that was laboring a little bit as well. This is a Bradley team team as well outside the top 225 with regards to total possessions per game. Bradley is just absolutely mauling teams on the defensive side of things as well. Take out that Indiana State game, and they have been holding everyone to 72 points or fewer. So looking at the under semi-total 140, but here at north of 8, going to be willing to take those points with Evansville. 7-13, 7-14 on the betting board. Drake plays us to Southern Illinois. Southern Illinois is an underdog of 10 points. Drawn's game is 138. I did set Drake as a favorite of 9 points. So here at the 10, I'm going to be willing to take those points with Southern Illinois. I think that Southern Illinois is going to be able to hold in there because this team is very slow and very deliberate. Last time these two teams played, Drake did go on the road. They got the job done by a count of 76-58 in that game. Southern Illinois, they shot 36% from the floor, 24% from three-point range, and they got completely outboarded in that game, 35-26. But this is a Southern Illinois team that they are able to do a relatively solid job around their main scorer in Xavier Brown of being able to glass. This is a bunch in Southern Illinois that's about 112th in all of college basketball. Regards to rebound rate, Drake a little bit better at 82nd. You're going to have the best rebounder, Darnell Brody, being able to supply about 8.5 rebounds per game. But Clarence Rupert on the flip side for Southern Illinois, he's done a good job being able to give you about 6 boards per contest. And you've got a Southern Illinois team that they do a nice job by committee. You've got Rupert, who's the only guy on the roster that gives you north of 4.4 rebounds per game. But you pretty much have 5 separate guys that give you at least 3.7 rebounds per game. And then Xavier Johnson, he is your do-it-all floor general. 23.5 points, which is second among qualifying players in all of college basketball. Shooting 40% from 3, 90% the free throw line, 6 assists, does turn the ball over about 3.5 times per contest, but as a team, the Southern Illinois bunch, they only turn the ball over about 11.5 times per contest, and this is a Southern Illinois team that they are able to stroke it from three-point range. They rank about in the top 75 with regards to three-point shooting percentage. You're shooting 37.1% as a collective, and it has been a team that has been able to travel relatively well with regards to that three-point shooting. They're shooting about 35.5% from three-point range in a road/shoot corner environment. They do go up against their Drake team that there's no question about it. They do get a little bit of a nice boost with regards to their offense when they are at home. They've been able to generate about 7 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/shoot corner environment. They are about 37th in all of college basketball with this regard. And Tucker DeVries, we talk about the do-it-all versatility of Mr. Xavier Johnson. How about him being able to supply the team with 20.5 points, north of 5 boards, 3.5 assists per game, and then Aiden Wright has been Mr. Wright in terms of helping him out, giving you about 14 points, shooting 37.5% for three-point. And what Drake does really well, they don't turn it over. They're a top 30 team with regards to ball control, only turn the ball over about 9.5 times per contest. It is a Drake team that has been able to do a very solid job of just being consistent with their offense. Sans that game against Indiana State, which once again, they're the big bad wolf right now in the Missouri Valley Conference. They've gotten to at least 74 points and now 6 out of their last 7 games. Meanwhile, for this Southern Illinois team, they've been able to do a solid job holding up with their defense as well. They have now given up 71 points or fewer in regulation because they played an overtime game or 2, and now each out of their last 6 games ever since they played against Drake. So I do think that for Southern Illinois, they're going to be able to hold in this game, and they're going to be able to slow it down quite a bit. I did set my total at a 137. I'm going to be diving in on the total under and being able to get double figures for Southern Illinois. Take the points, set them as a 9-point dog. 7-15, 7-16 on the betting board. Missouri State hits the road face-off against Northern Iowa. And Northern Iowa is a 5.5-point favorite. Your total on this game is 138.5 with Northern Iowa. I did set them as a 5.5-point favorite, seeing a few straight 5s out there. I'm willing to lay up to 5 points with them. With Northern Iowa, the squad has been able to do a really nice job of just being able to get guys in space and being able to shoot it from three-point range. Just as a collective, they're shooting a little bit over 35% from the outside with 43% out of Trey Campbell. Trey Campbell has been able to supply about 9 points, a little bit over a steal per contest. Meanwhile, it's been Nathan Heisey, Bowen Bourne, who have been your top 2 overall scorers, supplying about 27 points per game. Heisey shoots about 37.5% from 3, and for Northern Iowa, they're doing a nice job in terms of ball control, giving up just 10.8 turnovers per game. They're going up against a Missouri State team that has been falling on some relatively rough times in terms of their defense. Now, a lot of this is warped by overtime. They played an overtime game against Southern Illinois, a double overtime game against Drake, so that certainly does hurt them quite a bit. But that said, this has been a squad that has now given up at least 69 very nice points in each of their last 6 games. It is a Missouri State team that's playing quite a bit more up-tempo than they did a season ago with Tulsa Mason headlining things with 4 assists, 18.5 points for a squad that shoot about 32% from three-point range, but they've cut down on the turnovers a little bit. And this is still a Missouri State team that they're able to get after it in terms of being able to guard the three-point arc. For Missouri State, they're allowing opponents to shoot from three-point range in that pocket about 32.5%. 39% from distance. This does so shoot up to about 34.5% from three-point range in a road/short-corner environment. Northern Iowa does have a kryptonite with regards to giving up threes as well, 247th in the country with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage. But for Northern Iowa, out of conference, this was one of the most wretched defenses in all of college basketball. They've now been able to climb back into the top 225 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, as they've really been able to muster off some good defensive performances. They have given up 72 points or fewer in now 6 out of their last 8 games. And if you take out of the fold games against Indiana State, they have now given up 72 points or fewer in 8 out of their last 10. And this is a game that we saw previously with Northern Iowa hitting the road, winning a 64-62 grind them out slog, in which these two teams went to combine 9 of 41 from three-point range. I do think that both teams are going to be a little bit warmer with that regard, but Northern Iowa, despite the fact that you don't really have anyone other than Titan Anderson, who's been able to give you about 6.2 rebounds per game, give you north of 6 boards per contest, should be able to do a solid job down low. Missouri State, top 125 team with regards to their rebound rate, with NJ Benson being able to give you 7 boards per contest. But I do like Northern Iowa to be able to control this game much like they did the first time around, in a game in which I do think that there's going to be some light game fouling, and we have seen Missouri State giving up some more points recently. I do think that the shooting is going to be much more warm than it was the first time around. So a circumstance where I'm going to be looking at the over. I set my total 139.5, and with Northern Iowa, willing to lay up to 5 with them. 7-17, 7-18 on the betting board. Portland is on the road facing off against Gonzaga. Gonzaga a 26 to a 26.5 point favor. Totals between 159 and 159.5. I can only set my line at a 24. This feels like you're playing a Gonzaga tax once again in this one, as Gonzaga just has not been the same team this season, and that the offense is just not where it has been in past years. This has actually been a little bit of a better Gonzaga defense, so especially when they've been at the kennel. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, this Gonzaga team is a top 30 team in all of college basketball. They are allowing 92.1 points per 100 possessions when they're at home. Now they go up against Portland team as one of the worst defenses that you're going to find in all of college basketball. 351st in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, giving up 16.3 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home. But I do think that Tyler Robertson and his versatility, 16.5 points, 4 assists, able to shoot 36% from three-point range, that'll be able to keep this team lively. And it's a Portland team that they do have each of their top 4 scorers being able to shoot at least 35.9% from three-point range. And I do think that Yutu Yamanachi Williams, who comes in from Lamar, 6'10" combo player that's able to shoot 42% from 3, give me 6 boards, 10.5 points per contest, is going to be able to elevate this team just a little bit in this ordeal. Meanwhile, you've also got Tyler Harris, who's able to give you 7.5 rebounds per game. Gonzaga is going to be able to win that battle down low, because you've got Graham Ike, Anton Watson, a combined 15 rebounds, 30 points per game, and they're combined to shoot about 40% from three-point range as well. This is a Gonzaga team that, in terms of rebound rate, they get to go up against the Portland team as well outside the top 200 with this regard. Meanwhile, Gonzaga, they are 15th in all of college basketball. But what is really big for Gonzaga is just having Ryan Nembhard cutting down on the turnovers. He's up to 5.8 assists to about 2.3 turnovers per game, still only shooting about 30% from three-point range, but it's been better for him recently. You've got guys like a Ben Gregg, Brandon Huff, who have been able to combine for about 19 points per contest. So Gonzaga has some nice ancillary pieces. They just don't have the same oomph that they've got with their top guys that they have had in past years. And this has been a Portland team that has fallen on some tough times with their offense as well. 65 points or fewer scored in 3 out of their last 5 games. Defense has been all over the place, to say the least. This is a Gonzaga team that they themselves have been able to reach a 77-point plateau in 4 of their last 5 games, but also the defense, I was alluding to a little bit earlier, 73 points or fewer surrendered each of their last 5 games. I do think that Portland is going to get line-based in this game. I do feel like we went just a little bit too far here. This is the sort of a number that you'd expect to lay with a vintage Gonzaga team, not necessarily one that doesn't have that main go-to score. So I did set my line at a 24. I'm going to be willing to take 26 to 26.5 with Portland, make my total 156. So also looking under 719, 720 on the betting board. Georgia Southern is going to be playing on the road against South Alabama. South Alabama, a favorite of 5.5 points. Total on this game, going to be finding it at a 153.5 to a 154 with South Alabama. I did set them as a favorite of 8 points. I'm going to be willing to lay this summer with South Alabama. The squad has been rough in terms of their defense. They are outside the top 250 with regards to their rebound rate, and this is a team that, with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, they are well outside the top 225 with that regard. But Georgia Southern, they're hovering right around about 300th with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis as well. And for this Georgia Southern team. It's just a case where you don't know what you're going to be able to get out of anyone not named Tyron Moore. As Tyron Moore has been able to give you more. He's supplying the team with 15.5 points, 3 assists, shooting 41.5% from three-point range, but nobody else on the roster is giving north of 10 points per contest. They've been without Duquesne really ever since the middle of December. Eugene Brown, who has come back in the fold after he was a bit banged up to begin the season, only give you about 8.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game, and this is a Georgia Southern team that, just in general, they need to do a better job of being able to hit the glass. Georgia Southern last season had really good production out of Carlos Curry down low. I don't know what the deal is, but he's been out of the fold for much of the season, and when he has played, he's been playing relatively limited minutes. As a result, Georgia Southern is 334th in the country with regards to their rebound rate. Typically, that's a main kryptonite that you've got with this South Alabama team, but this season with South Alabama, this has been a squad that has gotten a little bit more from the outside. They're shooting about 32.5% from distance, with Isaiah Gator leading the way with 14.5 points, 5 boards per contest, and then Tyrell Jones is able to shoot about 34.5% from the outside. South Alabama doing a solid job protecting the ball, giving up just 11 turnovers per contest, but with them dealing with the injury to Maxwell Land as well, that's been hurting their offense just a little bit, but I do think that they're going to be able to take it to a Georgia Southern defense that has been one of the most wretched in all of college basketball. South Alabama, they themselves have not necessarily been too tremendous with this regard, but I just don't know who from Georgia Southern is going to be able to step up, do their part in being able to get this total over. Georgia Southern right now 266th in the country with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, scoring 16.2 points fewer per 100 possessions when they do leave home. So a circumstance where I did set South Alabama as an 8-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. And in terms of the total, I did set mine at a 150, as I think that Georgia Southern just doesn't do their part with this total. So looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with South Alabama, 721, 722 on the betting board. North Texas is ready to face off against Tulsa, and Tulsa does find themselves as a home underdog of 5 points. Your total on this game was 132.5 to 133. Did set by total of 135. Looking at the over, this is a Tulsa team that overall for the season, they're still somehow, some way a top 100 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. But man, this team has been getting absolutely cooked with regards to their defense. You take a look at what happened in that game against Florida Atlantic. They gave up north of 100 points in that one. For Tulsa, they are a team that's giving up in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis more than 15 points fewer per 100 possessions at home. But in conference play, they are giving up nearly 15 more points per 100 possessions rather than when they were in non-conference play. I do think that is going to be continuing here against a North Texas team that they're going to play very slowly and deliberately. North Texas is in the bottom 20 in all of college basketball with regards to total possessions per game, but you've got a pair of guys in Aaron Scott along with Jason Edwards who have done a solid job being able to supply about 30.5 points per contest. With Scott, he's able to shoot 39.5% from three-point range. Once again, Tulsa's defensive numbers are so misleading. They're a team that, if you look at their overall three-point shooting percentage defense for the season, you'd think that they're a relatively solid team. They're allowing opponents to shoot only about 30.9% from three-point range, but once again, in conference, that has really been creeping upward. You've got a Tulsa team that has B.J. Haggerty. He's done a nice job. He's supplied the team with about 19 points per contest, but you've had all sorts of inconsistency with regards to this team because they've been dealing with a few injuries of their own. You would also like to see someone like an Israel Barnes, who's only giving you about 8 or so points per contest, to be able to step up as well. Now for North Texas, they have fallen on some tough times in terms of their offense as well. This team has failed to get past the 68-point plateau in 4 of their last 5 games. It is a Tulsa team, though, that they are very open to giving up a lot of points. They have given up just north of 75 points in all but 2 out of their last 10 games. I do think that for North Texas, they're going to be able to get back online. This is a Tulsa team that, with regards to the rebound rate, they're outside the top 125 with this regard. They're getting outboarded in their conference games. Jared Garcia has been able to give you about 6 rebounds per game, but with Robert Allen being able to give North Texas right around about 7.5 rebounds per game, with also having the buggy man, John Buggs III, when he's been out there, as he's been dealing with a little bit of an injury, being able to give this team a little bit of versatility, shooting 45% from three-point range. I do think that North Texas goes on the road, gets the job done in a game that I think is going to be close enough for late game felling, and I do think that Tulsa just continues their scorched earth defense, in which they allow everyone to be able to score, and Tulsa, a top 50 team with regards to total possessions per game as well. I did set my total at a 135, looking at the over of North Texas, want to lay up to 6.5 with them. 723, 724 on the betting board. Texas State plays this Appalachian State. Appalachian State is an 8-point favorite. Your total is between 133 and 133.5. I did set Appalachian State as a favorite of 6.5 points. I'm going to be willing to take the 8 with Texas State. Texas State has had a relatively rough go of it this season, especially on the offensive side of things, but being able to get Colton Benson back in the fold, I think it's just so massive. He was one of those transfers that was not out there on the floor to begin the season, but ever since he's come back, he has been the main three-point shooter for the Texas State team. In the games that he's played, 13 in total, shoots 42% from three, is able to supply the team with about 7.5 points per contest for a Texas State team that does rank in the top 175 with regards to rebound rate. Now, Appalachian State has been very supreme in terms of their defense. This team continues to be a top 40 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and a team that does a nice job in the top 75 with regards to rebound rate as well. On top of that, you've got Justin Abson, who's been able to give you nearly 3 blocks per contest. That's been a big reason why Appalachian State has been very consistent home and road. Appalachian State, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis in a roadside shoot-to-court environment, they are a top 15 team in all of college basketball with this regard, but it is an Appalachian State team that leaves a lot to be desired on offense, shooting just 31.5% from distance, 65.5% at the free throw line. Your top scorer has been Trayvon Spillers, someone who does not shoot threes, gives you though about 8.5 boards, 13.5 points per game, while Donovan Gregory, he's a little bit of a versatile, do-it-all sort of guy, as he and Miles State combined for about 6.5 assists, between the two of them, about 20 points per contest, and then Abson is able to give you about 7.5 rebounds per game. But for Texas State, even though this team leaves a lot to be desired offensively as well, they're only shooting about 32% from three-point range. They have been able to elevate a little bit more. This team has been able to do also a very solid job, giving up 66 points or fewer in each of their last 3 games. It is a Texas State team that always looks to just being able to control things down low themselves, as they've been able to get about 11.5 points, 6 boards per contest out of Brandon Love. They've been dealing with Davion Sykes all season long, being out of the fold due to injury, but he's back and he has been very good when he's been out there, giving you a steal, 9.5 points, 6 rebounds per game. This is a Texas State team that all season long has been fighting through injuries. Now that they're getting a lot of pieces back in the fold, I do think that this is going to be a slow bleeder of a game. Both of these teams well outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game, and for Texas State, they actually, over the last 2 years, have a lot more points per possession at home rather than in a roadside shoot-court environment, but I do think that this is a good spot for them to be able to hold in this game. I think that this is going to be a defense-oriented game, so did somebody total 132.5, diving under, and with Appalachian State, going to make them a 6.5 point favorite, so willing to take the 8 with Texas State. 725, 726 on the betting board. Rice, we give our own to Lane Kiffin. Go Owls, they play us to SMU, and SMU is a 6.5 point favorite. Your total is 145. I did set SMU as a 7.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. SMU has been a very fascinating team in terms of their defense. This team is in the top 10 nationally with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. This is also an SMU team that has been getting gashed just a little bit more defensively recently. This team has now given up at least 69 points in 5 out of their last 6 games, but they go up against a Rice team that, while they're starting to heat up a little bit with their 3-point shooting, as you've got Makai Mason, you got Travis Evie, guys who have been in the program for quite a while, giving you combined about 30.5 points per contest. They're still shooting as a collective about 33.5% from 3-point range, and this is a Rice team that, if you look at their raw offensive numbers, points scored on a per possession basis, they're just 229th in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, for SMU, it's all about Chuck Harris being able to chuck the ball in there from distance to be able to generate this offense. SMU, about 96th in the country with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. Harris is able to shoot north of 40% from 3-point range, and for this SMU team, he is pretty much the only out of their top 5 scorers that has been able to shoot above 24% from 3-point range. That said, your ancillary pieces like a B.J. Edwards, who's been your main facilitator with about 4 assists per contest, Emery Lanier, these 2 guys have been able to combine to shoot about 43.5% from 3-point range. Neither of these guys really give you north of 5 points per contest, but SMU also doing a nice job controlling the boards, top 75 team with this regard, with having so many guys like a Tariq Smith, Samuel Williamson combining for about 13 rebounds per game, while Tariq Phelps, even though he doesn't really bomb it from 3-point range, he has been able to supply the team with 14.5 points per contest, nice slasher to the rim. And then when it comes to this Rice team, in games not involving D2 opponents, the SWAC and the Southland Conference, they have given up at least 76 points in all but 3 of them thus far this season, so they've been getting gashed with that regard. Max Fiedler is able to give you 10 boards, 9 points, and at 6'11", he's filling out 5.5 assists per contest. You've now got a 41% 3-point shooter in Alam Husinovic. That's been big for the team, but at the same time, I do think that for Rice, they're just not going to have enough offense to be able to get by an SMU team that has been a top 40 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. So I do think that Rice going to continue to give it up on defense. I did set my total 145.5, so here at the 145, looking over, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 7 points with SMU. 727, 728 on the betting board. James Madison, it's a road face-off against Arkansas State, and Arkansas State is an underdog of 5 points. Your total on this game, it is 160. I set James Madison as a favorite of 7 points. So I'm going to be willing to lay this number. It's an Arkansas State team that has actually been giving up more points per possession at home rather than on the road, and it's not like they're a supreme defense to start with. Arkansas State 300th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, giving up 6.3 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside-shoot record environment. And this James Madison team is now 10th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. When they're in a roadside-shoot record environment, that actually elevates more around 9/10th, depending upon the way that Tuesday's action went. And for this James Madison team, they should be able to do a nice job controlling things down low. TJ Bickerstaff has come in. He's been able to give the team 9+ rebounds per game, even though this James Madison team has cooled down from their very good three-point shooting percentage that they had towards the beginning part of the season. You still have Terrence Edwards, who's able to give you about 17 points per contest, throws in their 3 assists, shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range, and then Julian Wood and Noah Friedel, they're both shooting about 38.5% from 3 with a combined about 24.5 points per contest. It is a James Madison team that, just by committee, they do a nice job of being able to generate turnovers as well. This team is generating 9.6 steals per game in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. It is a top 40 mark in all of college basketball, going up against an Arkansas State team that they did bring back quite a bit of their backcourt from the season ago. Caleb Fields has been able to supply 15 points, north of 5 assists per contest, shoots in the high 30s to low 40s from three-point range. You've also been able to have Avery Felts be a little bit of an off-the-ball guy who's able to give you multiple assists. He throws in there about 7.5 points per contest on 41% three-point shooting. And for Arkansas State, considering they're a top 125 team with regards to possessions per game, the 12 turnovers per game, it's not bad. And you do have DeAndre Dominguez, who's able to give you about 12.5 points, 7 boards per contest. But I do think that this is an Arkansas State team that is just going to be completely outgunned down low. And this James Madison team, they're not quite the same offense when they do leave home. This is a James Madison team that overall for the season, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they're actually far better on the defensive side of things, as they're 40th in the country with this regard, and they've got an Arkansas State team on their hands that is averaging actually about 27 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot score environment. So I do think that this is going to be an up and down game. I do think that Arkansas State is going to be able to get theirs, but this is a James Madison team that they have been able to get to at least 76 points in each of their last 4 games. I do think that for Arkansas State, a team that has been able to break the 75-point plateau, and now each out of their last 5 games that they're going to be able to put up some offense as well. And for that matter, Arkansas State, since the turn of the new year, they've gotten to at least 75 points in all but one of their games. They have some success here, but in the end, I do think that James Madison too well-rounded and they get the job done. I'm going to be willing to lay the number with James Madison, set this line at 7, and going to be taking a look at the over semi total at a 163, 729, 730 on the betting board. Murray State, it's a road face-off against Belmont, and Belmont does find themselves as a 1-point favorite to a pick. I mean, your total is between 145.5 and 146, and with Belmont, I did set them as a favorite of 2.5 points. So I'm going to be willing to lay the 1. It's a Belmont team that has had all sorts of issues with regards to their defense. They are well outside the top 225 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and this is a Belmont team that when they are away from home, they just get completely cooked from three-point range. At home, it hasn't been quite as bad, though. Belmont overall, 257th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but they're allowing opponents to shoot 30.8% from 3 at home in a roadside shoot court venue. This goes to about 38%, and they do go up against a Murray State team that they have had all sorts of issues being able to guard the three-point line. For Murray State, 264th in the country with this regard, but they allow opponents to shoot just 32% from 3 away from home. This balloons up to about 38.5% when they are at home, and this is a Murray State team that has been able to find the rhythm in terms of backcourt, as you've got a pair of guys, Jacoby Wood along with Rob Perry, who have been able to do a nice job combining for about 24.5 points per contest. With Wood, he's been able to lay the wood with his three-point shooting percentage at about 43.5%, though it is a Murray State team that, all in all, they're only shooting about 32.5% from the outside. Now, I will also say this about Murray State. They are a top 30 team in all of college basketball in terms of protecting the ball, only about 9.3 turnovers per game. And for Murray State, while this is a team that's well outside the top 225 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, this has been a defense that has really woken up ever since a very bad start to the season. They have now given up 72 points or fewer in each out of their last 10 games, so it has been a rather remarkable run for them. Meanwhile, down low, you do have Nick Ellington, who's been able to give you about 6 boards, 11 points per contest. All in all, it is a Murray State team that is a bunch that is going to have a little bit of a tough time on the glass. They're outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate, but this is also a Belmont team that they are not necessarily the strongest down low. With Belmont, not. Their rebound rate is about 311th in all of college basketball, so Murray State is going to have a nice little edge there. But that said, this is a Murray State team that is going to have to guard all the versatility that you've got, with Belmont having Malik Dia, Kate Tyson be able to supply combined about 34.5 points per contest, and Tyson shooting 42.5% from three. Belmont as a whole, they're shooting about 37% from the outside. They don't necessarily get too much of a bump with their three-point shooting percentage when they're at home rather than when they are in a roadside shoot record environment, as this is a Belmont team that they're only averaging about 0.6 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot record venue. But I do think that this game does get cranked up a little bit more for Murray State. They've been looking much better with their defense recently, but at the same time, this is a Belmont team that they get things to be very, very harebrained. They have given up at least 77 points in now 5 out of their last 6 games. I do think that this is going to be a bit more of an up-tempo game. I do think that Belmont gets it done at home. Semi-line at 2.5, I'm going to be willing to lay up to deuce with Belmont, and semi-total 148.5. It's also looking over. 731, 732 on the betting board. UIC, Illinois, Chicago. It's a road face-off against Illinois State. Illinois State is a 4.5 point favorite. Your total is between 133 and 134. I did set UIC as an underdog of 2.5 points. I'm going to be willing to take the points. UIC is a top 50 team in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and for UIC, while the offense has very much been failing them recently, this has been a defense that has been one of the best on the road in all of college basketball. They are a top 15 team in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, going up against an Illinois State team that they really don't do anything horrible with regards to the defensive side of things, but it's not like they necessarily pop. With Illinois State, they're 152nd in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but also giving up 1.7 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than when they are away from home. This Illinois State team is only shooting 27.5% from three-point range. Darius Burford, along with Marcus Foster, been able to supply about 24 points per contest, and for Illinois State, they should be able to do a moderate job on the glass. Foster has been able to give about 7 boards per contest. In terms of this overall Illinois State team, they're about 103rd in the country with regards to rebound rate compared to Illinois Chicago, who's 277. So Illinois Chicago probably going to be giving up a lot of second and third chances in this one, despite the fact that Toby Okani has good versatility, 7.5 boards, 0.5, 2 blocks, only shooting about 30% from three-point range. Meanwhile, Isaiah Rivera along with CJ Jones, they've been able to supply in the backcourt a combined about 25.5 points per game, with Jones being able to do a nice job and be able to dish it out with 4.7 assists per game. UIC does need to cut down on the 12.5 turnovers per game, but they also run into an Illinois State team that has not done a great job of being able to generate turnovers. They're well outside the top 200 with that regard. With this Illinois State team, they're pretty solid at being able to guard the arc when they're away from home, but at home, this does shoot up to north of 35% from three. They are outside the top 200 as a result with regards to their opponent's three-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, this UIC team, they just absolutely take away the three-point arc from you, and I do think that is going to be so critical in this spot. You've got a Illinois State team that isn't too bad at being able to take care of the ball, and for UIC, it's not like they've been absolutely incredible at being able to generate turnovers, but they're about 175th in all of college basketball with regards to turnovers force per game, so I do think that UIC going to be able to do a solid job of holding in there with Isaiah Rivera having all sorts of versatility, and Illinois State in general just not necessarily having, for one, that go-to scorer, and two, just a lot of offensive firepower in general. I do think that this is going to be a tight game that is not going to be featuring a lot of scoring. I set my total at a 134.5. Here at the 134, I'm going to be looking at the over. I think that this is a game that is going to be close enough for late game falling in. This is a UIC team that, to their detriment, they have given up at least 74 points each of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, you've got a Illinois State team that's giving up more points per possession at home rather than away from home. So I'm going to look at the over and going to be willing to take the points with the UIC as I set them as a 2.5 point underdog. 733, 734 on the betting board. Georgia State, it's road face off against Louisiana. And Louisiana just find themselves as an 8.5 to an 8 point favorite. And your total is between 151 and 152. I did set Louisiana's a 10 point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to lay up to 9.5 with the Raging Cajuns. This is a Georgia State team that's done a really good job of just being able to take care of the ball. Last season, this team was a little bit of a disaster with that regard. I like what Juwan Odom is to be able to do in the backcourt. He's to be able to give the team 4.5 assists to 1.7 turnovers per game. He's supplying about 4.5 to 5 rebounds per game, all while being able to give the team about 12.5 points on 44% three-point shooting. And for Georgia State, this is a top 50 team with regards to fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, but they do only shoot about 32.5% from three-point range, and they do go up against a bunch in Louisiana that has been a top 20 team all season long in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. As a matter of fact, opponents are shooting 20.7% from three-point range at home against them. Now, I do think that we are going to see a little bit of regression with that regard. That is just not a sustainable number, to say say the least. And Georgia State does have a little bit of a leg up down low with Jaden Turner being able to give you 9 rebounds per game. Like Joe Charles for Louisiana, he's able to give you about 9 boards and a double-figure amount of points per game as well. Kobe Julian, he throws in there about 4.5 to 5 rebounds, 16 points. He's a relatively solid 3-point shooter as well. This is a Louisiana team, though, that overall, they're about 206th in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. Georgia State clocking in more around 227th, but for this Louisiana team, they do a nice job being able to flow the ball and being able to take care of it with about 12 turnovers per contest while being a top 80 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Famous folks, Lanthusana, Kittredge, they've both been able to give you about 11.5 points per contest. Kittredge has been able to give you about 5.5 boards, and then Folks 4.5 assists to 2.5 turnovers per game, while Kentrell Garnett continues to shoot about 43% from 3 points for a Louisiana team that overall they have been able to shoot 37% from 3-point range. So Louisiana has, ironically enough, been scoring about 6.5 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot scoring environment. But they do get paired up against a Georgia State team that has been all sorts of rough with the way that they've been giving up the arc ball outside the top 200 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. It's a Georgia State team that, very strangely, they have been about 175th with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, this team is clocking in more around 266, only giving up about 4 points more per 100 possessions away from home. But all in all, it's been a relatively rough situation there. And for Georgia State, they have now given up at least 77 points each out of their last 5 games, while Louisiana's hit at least 80 in 4 out of their last 5. So this is a total I set at a 152 at the 151 half. Looking over, and I'm willing to lay up to 9.5 with Louisiana. 735, 736 on the betting board. Providence plays us for Creighton. Creighton is a 1.5 to a 2-point favorite. Your total is 141.5 to 142. Did set Creighton as a 3.5 point favorite. So I'm going to be looking to lay the 1.5 to 2. It has been a Creighton team that all season long has been very touch and go in terms of their offense. It's still a top 30 team with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, but because they do play such a slow, grimy pace, this is a bunch that they can go off for like 85 plus on any given night, and they can also be held below 65. You've got Baylor, Shireman, Trey Alexander, Ryan Kalkbrenner. Your main 3 guys, these 3 guys have been able to supply about 50 points per contest, and between the 3 of them, I mean, it's been incredible with them being able to give you about 22 rebounds per game. Shireman and Alexander, 8.5 assists. Kalkbrenner, your main man down low with about 2.5 blocks per contest. The problem is depth. You need to get a little bit more out of someone like a Fran Faribault, who's only giving you about 4 points per contest. They were giving a lot of minutes early on to Isaac Trout. Those minutes have dried up, so I would like to see Creighton be able to expand the bench a little bit more. Meanwhile, for Providence, it's just been a rough display in general, with Bryce Hopkins being out of the fold. Hopkins has not played since January 3rd, so it's become the Devin Carter show, being able to give you 18.5 points, 8 boards, 3.5 assists, 6.5 per contest. It has been a Providence defense that has been falling off a little bit, but they're still a top 25 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and they've still been pretty rock solid in terms of just being able to hold up defensively. This team has now given up fewer than 70 points in 4 out of their last 6 contests. It is a bunch, though, that they just don't have a lot with regards to their outside shooting about 31.5% from 3, 13 turnovers per game. Now, good news is you go up against a Creighton team that's one of the worst teams in all of college basketball, being able to generate takeaways. The bad news is this is a Creighton team that does rank in the top 40 nationally with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and this has been a Creighton team that has done a good job all season long of just really being able to D up and being able to protect really the rim. I would like to see a few more minutes as well from Fred King, who's a good rim protector in his own right, but that said, for this Creighton bunch, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they're 64th in all of college basketball, giving up just 0.2 of a point more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home, and the turnovers have been very costly for this Providence team. As a result, this bunch, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they're just 206th in all of college basketball. Going into the dunk, it's a very tough place to play. I do think that Providence is going to be able to provide a lot of resistance. That said, I do like this Creighton team, even though they are top heavy, to be able to slow this game down and just barely be able to get the job done. I did set my total 143.5. I do think that this Creighton team is going to be able to find a few cracks in a Providence defense that is still solid, but not quite the same without Hopkins. So looking at the over, and one to lay up to 3 with Creighton. 737, 738 on the betting board. Nebraska, it's a road face-off against Northwestern, and Northwestern is a 4-point favorite. Your total is 143. I just said Northwestern as a favorite of 3 points, so I'm going to be willing to take the 4 with Northwestern. This team is now well outside the top 100 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and for Northwestern, they're really looking to their outside shooting to be able to save them from their outside shooting defense. Northwestern, 311th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, while the Nebraska team is about 124th. Nebraska has Casey Shomanaga, who's done a nice job of showing out, being able to give this team right around about 13 points per contest. Meanwhile, when it comes to the overall versatility that you've got for Nebraska. Rink Mass, he has been tremendous with about 8 boards, 13 points. He's been able to shoot it very well from 3-point range. You've also been able to have Bryce Williams do a very good job of being able to supply the team within that neighborhood of about 13 to 13.5 points per contest. Throws in there some boards as well, while Northwestern, well outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate, because Brooks Barnheiser is the only guy in the roster right now that has been able to give you north of 4.5 rebounds per game. He's been able to supply 6.5 boards per contest for a Northwestern team that they're currently shooting 39.3% from 3-point range. But I do think that the old theory of what comes up must come down is going to be holding very true for them. The one thing that Northwestern does a very good job of, they don't turn it over. They're a top 20 team in the country with regards to fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. And this is a Northwestern team that is a completely different animal with their offense at home rather than in a roadside shoot corner environment. They're averaging about 16.2 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than away from home, and they're shooting 40.6% from 3-point range at home in a roadside shoot corner environment. That does decrease a little bit to about 38%, but I do think that Nebraska going to be able to do a better job on the glass. This Northwestern team has to go up against a Nebraska bunch that has been all sorts of battle tested as well. It looks a little bit deceiving with regards to the defensive numbers of Nebraska, because they've given up at least 69 points in each of their last 5 games. But if you look at regulation and regulation only, this is a Nebraska team that they've now given up 73 points or fewer in each out of their last 5 games. Last time these two teams played, Northwestern fell in Nebraska by a count of 75 to 69. In that game, Northwestern shot just 10 of 31 from 3-point range. Nebraska had to go 7 of 13 from 3-point range, but I do think that Northwestern, even though they are a top 40 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, they aren't going to quite have the success that they did last time around, generating 18 turnovers. Nebraska completely manhandled the glass in that one. I expect that to be the same. I do think that Northwestern hits a few more shots, but I do think that this is going to be a relative nip and tuck game. I set my line at 3, so here at the 4, I'm going to be willing to take those points with Nebraska. Did set my total 141. I do think that Nebraska does a good job of being able to shut down the arc, so looking at the under and the points with Nebraska. 739, 740 on the betting board. Texas A&M, it's a road face-off against Missouri. Missouri does find themselves as a 4.5-point home underdog. Totals between 141 and 142. I just have Missouri as an underdog of 5 points. So, going to be willing to lay with Texas A&M. Texas A&M, in terms of offensive rebound rate, the percentage of missed shots that they all in as an offensive rebound, they're actually number 1 in all of college basketball. And that's massive, because this team has not been able to shoot it well from 3-point range at all. For Texas A&M, they shoot less than 27.5% from the outside. Wade Taylor continues to be Mr. Versatile. 3.7 boards, 3.7 assists, 2.2 steals, 20 points per game, but he's shooting about 30.5% from 3-point range now. To the good for Texas A&M, they have been only turning the ball over about 9.7 times per game, and this team, as I was alluding to, they just dominate the glass. Out of your top 6 scorers, you've got 4 of them who've been able to give you north of 5 rebounds per game. You've been able to get really good production out of Tyrese Radford ever since he's come back as well. He was missing for a few games a little bit earlier on during the season. He's now been able to supply 11 plus points in each of the last 4 games. Going against a Missouri team that your top 2 scorers and Tamar Bates along Sean East, they combine for about 29.5 points. They both shoot north of 44% from 3-point range, but man, it's been rough for this team as they shoot as a collective 33% from 3-point range. And for Missouri, they're just not doing anything on the glass. They're outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate. You thought that giant of the earth Connor Vanover was going to be having a nice role. They just haven't gotten him out there on the court. I'm not sure why. It is a Missouri team that has been better with regards to their defense at home rather than in a roadside shoot court environment. They are giving up about 13 points fewer per 100 possessions when they are at home, but they've been dealing with the injury to Caleb Grill all season long. Nick Honor has been able to give you 10 points on 40% 3-point shooting, but I do think that this Texas A&M team is going to continue to be able to ascend with regards to their 3-point shooting defense. Texas A&M overall about 206th in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but it was really bad towards the beginning part of the season. It's been improving as the season has went along, and both of these teams are relatively mid-tempo teams. Missouri has had to slow things down a little bit due to all the injuries that they've got and the fact that they've got absolutely no rebounding whatsoever. I do think the Texas A&M is going to get this game played at their terms. I do think that they are going to be able to dominate from the inside. It's an A&M team that's given up 71 points or fewer in each of their last 4 games. Meanwhile, for Missouri, this team has failed to break the 67-point plateau in 4 out of their last 5 games. So I did set my total 139, diving in on the under, and not willing to lay anything more than 4.5 with Texas A&M, but willing to lay the 4.5. I set my line at 5. 741, 742 on the betting board. Georgia hits the road face-off against Mississippi State. Mississippi State is 6.5 to a 7-point favorite. Your total is between 146 and 146.5. I did semi-total 141.5. Looking at the under, this is still one of the better defensive teams in all of college basketball, Mississippi State. Mississippi State, it's fallen off quite a bit, but they're still 46th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, giving up about 11.3 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot-to-court environment. And this is a Georgia team that they're a little bit one-dimensional in terms of their offense. You've got to love what you're able to get. Jabari Abdul-Rahim along with Noah Thomason, they've been able to combine for about 25 points per contest, but really outside these two guys, what else are you able to get? RJ Melendez is able to give you like 9 points, 5 boards. He does everything not terribly, but he doesn't do really anything well, for lack of a better term. For Georgia, they do shoot about 35% from three-point range, and for Georgia, they're okay on the glass. They're not great. They're not terrible. They're 225th in the country with regards to their rebound rate. Russell Chawa has been able to give you about 7 rebounds per game. Nobody else gives you north of 4.6 rebounds per game. Meanwhile, Mississippi State, this has still been one of the most dominant teams on the glass in all of college basketball. Tolu Smith, along with Charles Matthews, and you're able to throw in there as well Jimmy Bell. They've all been able to give you 6+ rebounds per game. Mississippi State, top 25 team in the country with regards to the rebound rate. And now you've been able to get a little bit more consistency with the offense, with Josh Hubbard being able to give the team 15 points per contest. He's shooting at a clip of about 35% from three-point range. As you may recall, last season, this team was dead last in the country with regards to three-point shooting percentage. And it's not to say that they're amazing or anything like that, but they are now shooting about 31% from three-point range. You've been able to have Shaquille Moore shooting the mid-30s from three-point range, shipping in there a CO per contest as well. This is a Georgia team that I do think that they're going to be just, in general, a little bit outgunned down low. I like the way that some of these young guys have been able to step up for Georgia, but I do think that with Mississippi State, part of the reason why their defensive numbers have really just climbed is that in their last 4 games, they had to play against Ole Miss, Alabama, Auburn, and Florida. Now that they get this test against a Georgia team that they have been really scuffling with their offense. They have scored now fewer than 70 points in 2 out of their last 4 games. They were able to break the 70-point plateau against Alabama and Florida, 2 super-duper up-tempo teams that they're going to have a little bit of a tougher time here. Semi-total 141.5. I think order is restored with this Mississippi State defense. I think that they're able to cover this number. Semi-line at a 7.5. Want to lay up to 7 with Mississippi State, and looking at this total under 743, 744 on the betting board. Duke is going to be playing us in Notre Dame, and Notre Dame does find themselves as a 16 to a 16.5 point underdog. And your total on this game is 134. With Duke, I made them a 17-point favorite. So here at the 16 to a 16.5, wouldn't want to lay anything more with Duke, but I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Duke. This Notre Dame bunch has been able to do a really good job of being able to make games yucky, slow, and we actually saw that the first time around when these two teams met up in January. Duke was able to get that win by kind of 67 to 59 in a game where they shot just 8 of 26 from three-point range, but you could tell that that was a game that Notre Dame was able to do a nice job of putting the clamps down on. But for this Notre Dame team, they're outside the top 320 with regards to ball security when they are at home. This is a Notre Dame team that, in their own right, they've been a top 80 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. But this is a Notre Dame bunch at as well. They're going to allow you some open looks from three-point range. They are allowing opponents to shoot 35.8% from three-point range in a roadside shoot-to-court environment. So that I think is going to be a massive issue here against a Duke team that they've been able to get quite a bit out of their backcourt. Gotta love what Tyrese Proctor has been able to do in terms of doling out the ball. Not necessarily a guy that goes into heat check mode with regards to shooting it from 3. And the first time these two teams played, he was dealing with a little bit of an injury, played very limited minutes, so it's very big that he's back out there. He's been able to give this team right around about 3.8 assists, 1.3 turnovers per game. That should allow the offense to be a little bit more clean for a Duke team that is shooting about 38% from three-point range. It is in the top 20 nationally with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, with Kyle Filipowski doing it all. A CO, 1.8 blocks, 17.5 points, 8.5 boards, shooting 35.5% from three-point range. Meanwhile, with this Notre Dame team, they go up against a Duke bunch that it's not like they're doing an amazing job of being able to generate turnovers or anything like that, but for Notre Dame, they've got the leader in terms of turnovers per game among qualifying players in Marcus Burton. 4.1 turnovers, 4 assists, 16 points per contest, and this is a Notre Dame team that has been able to give you a little bit more from the outside with Brandon Shrewsbury, along with J.R. Korzinski, who've been able to combine for about 19.5 points per contest, but with regards to Notre Dame, even though this has been a top 100 team with regards to the rebound rate, they just don't have enough, in my opinion, to give us a Duke team that they're going to be able to completely dominate with that regard. You've had Mark Mitchell being able to do solid work with about 5+ rebounds per contest. And then on top of that, the guy that goes a little bit unrecognized, in my opinion, is Jared McCain, who's been able to supply 13 points, 4.5 boards, shooting 40+% from 3-point range. He's had a double-figure amount of rebounds in each of the last 2 games. That should allow Duke to be able to win this game much more comfortably, and I do think that Duke going to shoot much better from 3-point range than they did the first time around. This is a circumstance where I did set Duke as a 17-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and did set my total 131. This Notre Dame team, in terms of regulation, because they played a few games that have went to overtime, they have now scored 65 points or fewer in regulation in every single game this calendar year, so I'm going to be taking a look at that total under, and I'm going to lay it with Duke. 745, 746 on the betting board. UCLA hits the road face-off against Stanford. Stanford is a 2.5-point favorite. Your total is between 135.5 and 136, and with Stanford, I did set them as a favorite of 2.5 points. I am seeing right now a 3.5 pop-up, and at that 3.5, I would be willing to take the points with UCLA. UCLA all of a sudden is playing some better basketball, though. You do have a Stanford team with some massive home and road splits with regards to the 3-point shooting. Going into Sunday against Arizona, it was a bunch that was shooting about 33.5% from 3-point range in a road/neutral court environment. Meanwhile, shooting about 43.5% from 3-point range at home. So that's something very important to be mindful of, but this is also a Stanford team that they themselves have been well outside the top 150 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, going up against a UCLA team that has heated up a little bit with regards to their offense. This is still not a team that has been able to do a great job of being able to put the ball in the basket, but I mean, it's been a little bit more respectable. Laser Stefanovic now shooting above 32% from 3-point range. He's been able to supply the team with double figures. Sebastian Mack has really been your main guy. The Mack truck has been able to give you about 13 points. Doesn't really dole out a lot of assists or anything like that. That's more Dylan Andrews, who's been able to give you about 4 assists and 2 turnovers a game. Meanwhile, for Stanford, your main facilitator has been Jared Bynum, and he played the last 2 games, but he played a combined 17 minutes against the 2 Arizona schools. He picked up 3 turnovers, he gave up 2 assists, and he didn't have any points. So I'm pretty much counting him out of the fold, and if he does play, he's going to be so limited that he just doesn't make any difference to the line whatsoever, in my opinion. And this is clearly a spot where you've got the better defense with UCLA. UCLA 52nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, granted, they are giving up 12.6 points more per 100 possessions in a road/neutral court environment rather than when they are at home. And for this UCLA team, it's still been all sorts of grimy with regards to this offense. 275th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but it does feel like the wheels are starting to turn a little bit for them. Maximilian Reynaud doing a solid job down low for Stanford, 14.5 points, 10 boards, but I do think that UCLA can win this rebound battle with Adam Bona and company doing a solid job there. And to the credit of UCLA, they've gotten to at least 71 points in 3 of their last 4 games. This is a Stanford team that they just give up 70 plus on the regular as well. I think that this is too low of a total. As a matter of fact, the last time Stanford gave up fewer than 70 points, January 3rd against UCLA, that was a 59-53 slog where neither team could hit the broadside of a barn. So it's a spot where I did set my line at a 2.5 with Stanford. Now that we are getting some 3s out there, I saw 3.5 earlier. I'm going to be willing to take 3 plus here with UCLA, and did set my total more around a 138.5. Going to be looking at the over. I think that both of these teams are warmer with their shooting than the first time around. 747, 748 on the betting board. Loyola Marymount is the road face-off against San Diego, and San Diego is an underdog of 2.5 to 3 points. Total on this game between 147 to 147.5. Did set Loyola Marymount as a favorite of 5.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. The San Diego team has really been having a tough time on the glass. Steve Jamerson II has been able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game, and Kevin Patton is able to give you about 5 boards per contest. But for Loyola Marymount, despite the fact that you really have only one guy in Alex Merkfeldez, who's been able to give you north of 5 rebounds per game, he's been able to give you 5.5 boards. As Kelly Le'u Pepe has really been having a little bit of a downfall with regards to the way that he has been contributing this year. This team is still 61st in the country with regards to their rebound rate. That should allow them to be able to dominate this game against a San Diego team that's just 248th with this regard. Coupled with that for Loyola Marymount, this team does a really good job of being able to protect the ball. Justice Hill, he has been out of the fold for quite some time as he came over from LSU along with Murray State, but now he's been able to come back for the last few games. He's been able to give this team some nice facilitation. I know that he's been a little bit in and out of the fold, but even if he doesn't go in this game, you've been able to get Will Johnson going. He's been able to give you about 3 assists, only turning the ball over about 1.5 times per contest. He's done a solid job being able to supply the team team as well, with north of double figures in 3 out of the team's last 5 games. And then you've got the best scorer in this game, in my opinion, Dominic Harris, 14.5 points, shooting 43.5% from 3-point range for a Loyola Marymount team that shooting about 36.5% from the outside with the mount. They've really slowed things down well outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game, going up against the San Diego team that they're able to shoot about 35% from 3-point range. Their issue has been the 14.5 turnovers per game. Now, Loyola Marymount, not a team that's absolutely going to just rip the ball away or anything like that, but Loyola Marymount is 75th in the country in taking away the arc, allowing opponents to shoot only about 32% from 3-point range. And for San Diego, the defense started out relatively solid at the beginning of the year. They are still a team that ranks in the top 110 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but with the way that Loyola Marymount is able to knife the ball down low, with the way that they've been able to do a good job of just being able to hit the glass in general, I do think that this is going to be too much for San Diego to overcome. I did set my total at 145.5. I'm going to be taking a look at this total under. It's a San Diego team that just has not been able to be very consistent with their offense all season long, currently clocking in 268th in the country with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, only averaging 2.2 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than on the road. So also going to be looking at the under in this spot, set my total 145.5 to go along with Loyola Marymount. Want to lay up to 5 with them. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra game. 749, 750. Cal is going to be playing against USC. USC, an underdog between 2.5 to 3 points. So on this game is 148.5. Did set my line at 3. We saw this opener at a 2.5. Still, as I'm doing this show, we're seeing a few 2.5s out there, and I'm willing to lay the 2.5 with Cal. With this USC team, it's just a rudderless bunch that has been stuck with regards to their offense ever since they've had the full Isaiah Collier. As a matter of fact, since Isaiah Collier has been out, they have scored fewer than 70 points in 5 out of their last 6 games, with the one exception coming against an Oregon State team that they just can't guard their own shadow when they're on the road. Now, the good news is Boogie Ellis has returned. He's been able to give the team 17.5 points, shooting 43.5% from 3-point range. He has been tremendous with that regard. And you have to wonder, by the way, if Isaiah Collier just gets shut down for the season, because he's probably going to be a lottery pick in the NBA draft. You've seen a little bit more as well out of DJ Rodman recently, 7.5 points, 5.5 boards, shooting 37.5% from distance, but has emerged recently on the glass, 7+ rebounds for the last 5 games. That's big for a USC team that typically this team is very good down low. Typically they're one of the best post defenses in all of college basketball. This season, USC is only about 147th in all of college basketball with regards to the rebound rate. And now they do have to go up against a duo in Jalen Tyson along with Fordas Amick. They combine for about 17 rebounds per game. It's a Cal team that they're about 157th with regards to their rebound rate. Amick and Tyson have been able to combine for about 35.5 points per contest. Both shoot about 34 to 35% from 3 for a Cal team that they've been able to do a good job of being able to take care of the ball with about 11.5 turnovers per game. And it's a Cal team that, if you look overall for the season, this team has been ghastly with regards to their defense. They're well outside the top 200 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. This team has really had their issues giving up the arc as well. Cal, 281st in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but it's been a little bit better for them recently. They've now given up 71 points or fewer in 3 out of their last 4 games in regulation, going up against a USC team that has really scuffled on offense. It's a Cal team that their backcourt has not been amazing, but you've got Keontae Kennedy now giving you about 10 points, 4.5 to 5 rebounds per game. He's been a nice contributor and has given the team 10 total steals in their last 3 games to be able to help elevate this defense. I do think the Cal just in better form in general, and you can tell that with USC not having out there in the fold one of their main scorers in Collier, that has really hurt them. Now, I do think that USC is going to be able to pick it up with their offense. This is a Cal team that, even though they've been a little bit better recently with regards to their defense, it's still been rough. And the last time these two teams played, 156 points were up on the board, despite Cal being about 11 of 31 from 3. I expect a relatively similar result here. So I do think that the role is going to be reversed with who gets the job done with having Collier out of the fold. So I'm going to be willing to lay up to 2.5 with Cal. So my total 153. So also looking at the over. Now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-501, 306-502, Charleston Southern. It's a road face-off against Winthrop. Winthrop is a favorite of 10 points. So on this game, it's 141. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Winthrop. Made them a 12.5 point favorite. This Winthrop team is just absolutely incredible at being able to take away the arc. This team is in the top 30 in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. It is a Winthrop team that they get a little bit loose with the ball. They're turning the ball over about 12.5 times per contest, but this is a Winthrop team in which they really do emphasize the whole being the greater than the sum of its parts approach. As for Winthrop, you don't necessarily have that one guy that's going to go into flamethrower mode. KJ Doucette has been able to give you about 14 points in the neighborhood, about 5 boards per contest. Alex Timmerman has been able to do a solid job being able to give you some boards as well, but Colton Telford has been able to give you about 14 points per game as well. And this is a Charleston Southern team that that they've been able to play much better recently. They've been able to get you some covers out there in the Big South. That said, this has been a team that has been quite inconsistent just because they've got a few top flight scorers like an RJ Johnson who's able to give you 17.5 points per contest. Alan Sumler has been able to chip in their 13.5 points per contest. And with Johnson and Sumler, they're combining to shoot about 38% from three-point range. But outside of your core 4/5, you don't have much else. They've been able to have Quentin Bolton, who comes in from Racine, Wisconsin, who has only played 8 games. In the 8 games that he has played, he's been able to supply about 8.5 points per contest as come back from injury. He's been looking relatively solid, but this is a Charleston Southern team that's just getting absolutely cooked with regards for 1, their defense, and 2, just down low in general. Charleston Southern, in terms of their rebound rate, they're clocking in well outside the top 250 with this regard, and for Charleston Southern, they are outside the top 300 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. Not to say that this Winthrop team has been some sort of an incredible rock on defense, but it is a Winthrop team that's more around 182nd in the country with regards to their overall points allowed on a per possession basis. And with Winthrop, I do think that their offense going to be able to guide them to victory. It's a Winthrop team that does clock in the top 130 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, with Kason Harrison being able to do a nice job doling out about 4 assists, doing that neighborhood of about 2 turnovers per game. Charleston Southern does not have a single guy that gives you north of 2.6 assists per contest, and this is a Charleston offense that it does take a little bit of a nosedive when they are on the road. Charleston Southern 300th in the country with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. So I do think that with Winthrop having the size that they do and being able to win the battle down low, they do get it done. I did set my total at a 144.5. It is a Winthrop team that they themselves are going to give up their open looks inside the arc, outside the arc. They do a good job of locking down there, but with Charleston Southern having as rough of defense as they do, I do think they get points of plenty. Going to be taking a look at the over, set my total 144, and with Winthrop, one lay up to 12 for them. 3 of 6, 503, 3 of 6, 504. UNC Asheville plays us High Point. High Point looks to not be a low point as 2.5 to 3 point favorites. Your total on this game is 157.5. Said High Point as a 2.5 point favorite. Here at the 3, I'm going to be looking at the points with the UNC Asheville. With Asheville, this bunch does give up quite a bit with regards to inside the arc, but this is another team that they do a really good job with regards to their perimeter defense, and this is a High Point team that they're a high-powered offense in the top 25 nationally with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, going up against an Asheville team that's 55th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. With Asheville, you've got 6'10" Drew Pember, who's able to give you 7.5 boards, 21 points, shooting 35.5% from three-point range. Fletcher Abey shoots north of 41% from three-point range. You've been able to get about 49% three-point shooter. Trent Stephanie, he has been absolutely incredible as he's been sort of inconsistent with regards to that scoring, but he's been able to emerge in a big way. And then Caleb Burgess is able to give you about 5 assists per contest. Meanwhile, High Point, they should be able to win this battle down low, despite the fact that they do have to go up against Pember. You've been able to have Kamani Hamilton, along with Jocelyn Bodu, who have been able to combine for about 16 rebounds per contest. And then you've been able to have a nice duo in the backcourt, Duke Miles, Keza Gifa. These two guys combined for about 36 points per contest. Gifa has been able to shoot 42% from 3. Miles is able to shoot 38% from distance. At High Point, they're a relatively up-tempo team that they only turn the ball over about 11 times per contest. Here's the issue that you've got with this High Point team. 287th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and it does get markedly worse on the road. They allow opponents in a road/current environment to shoot 37.4% from three-point range. This is a Nashville team that they leave quite a bit of something to be desired defensively as well. 272nd in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but with High Point at 248th, I do think that you get very much an up-tempo game. I do think that you're going to be able to get a plentiful amount of points in this spot, which is why I did set my total of 159. I'm going to be taking a look at the over with High Point. They're able to knife the ball down low, be able to get those buckets that way. Abdoulaye Thiam is a guy that's able to give you 11 points. He does a nice job. I'll be able to get the ball inside as well. So I do think that High Point is going to be able to get theirs, but with UNC Asheville being able to exploit a High Point team that themselves have given up north of 75 points in 4 of their last 6 games, and this is a UNC Asheville team that they've been able to get to the 73-point plateau in 4 of their last 5 games. I do think that you're in for a high-scoring expose. Going to be looking at the over and north of 3. Take the points with Asheville. 306, 505, 306, 506. Bellarmine plays us to Seton, and Seton is a 2 to 4 point road favorite. And your total on this game, it is 139. I set my number at a 3. Personally, I would rather lay the deuce than take the 4 in this spot, and this was an opener of a 2, so this is one that I do anticipate drawing up, and I'm betting this one very quickly because this is a Bellarmine Bellarmine team that they've got a nice track record of success from the last few years. This just does not look like the same team, though. They just have not been able to get the job done in really any facet of basketball. They're outside the top 275 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. They've been absolutely atrocious with regards to their three-point shooting defense. When it comes to rebound rate, Bellarmine is 332nd in all of college basketball, and this is a sensitive team that they themselves are outside the top 275 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. But at the very least for Seton, they should be able to win the battle down low. Auburn gets Stairsafe along with Langdon Hatton. Both of these guys do give their respective teams right around 7 boards per contest, with Hatton being on the side of Bellarmine, but nobody else helps out Hatton down low. Meanwhile, when it comes to the Seton team, you've been able to get some actually relatively solid rebounding out of your top 6 scorers when they're fully healthy. 4 of them are able to give you north of 4 rebounds per game, with Josh Smith, who last season was able to give the team 9.5 points per contest, coming back into the fold. Have you got by far the best scorer in this game? Jalen Blackman, 20.5 points, shooting 39.5% from 3-point range for a Seton team that they're shooting about 36.5% from the outside. And for Bellarmine, this team is about 203rd in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. They're actually worse at home at giving up the arc, though, rather than in a roadside shoot court environment. And for Bellarmine, you have been able to get back in the fold a few guys that have been banged up themselves. Ben Johnson has been able to give you double figures, so that's been big. Batch Weiland is able to give you about 11 to 12 points per contest after he was dealing with an injury as well. This is a Seton team that is going to give up their open looks as well, but they're about 173rd with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Seton should be able to do a better job of being able to guard the arc, and Bellarmine, they honestly have not seen too much of a home court edge this far this season, so could be one lay the deuce with Seton. Set my total 141. This is a Bellarmine team that is in the bottom 75 with regards to total possessions per game, but this is a Seton team that I think goes bounds away from 3-point range, and I do think that this could be a game close enough for late game felling, with a Seton bunch has gotten to at least 72 points each of their last 4 games. So looking at the over and going to be looking to lay it with Seton 306-507, 306-508. Boston U plays us Colgate. Colgate is a favorite of 7.5 points. Total on this game is 133.5 with Colgate. I did set them as a 6.5 point favorite. So here at the 7.5, I'm going to be taking a look at the points with Boston U. Now Boston U is atrocious with their offense, outside the top 320 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. This Colgate team, though, just is not the same offensively this year. 188th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They experience a drop-off of 10 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're in a roadside shoot court environment rather than when they are at home. And they're going up against a Boston U team that, I'm not saying that they're the Monstars or anything like that in terms of being able to guard the arc, but this team has not been too bad with that regard. It's a Boston U team that's about 205th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and this is a Colgate team that their lifeblood is being able to hit threes. They are 43rd in the country with regards to 3-point shooting percentage at 36.7%. That does fall to about 35.5% from distance when they're in a roadside shoot court environment, and right now they're relying upon Braden Smith to do a little bit of everything. 15 points, 5+ boards, 5+ assists per contest. Keegan Record should be able to do a solid job down low. He's been able to give the team a little bit of pop from 3-point range. Couple of that, he's been able to chip in there about 9 to 10 points per contest. And for Boston U, you don't have a single guy on the roster that gives you north of 10 points per contest. You get approximately 10 points per game out of Miles Brewster, who's able to shoot 39.5% from 3-point range, but team has been able to remain relatively wily with regards to the way that they hit the glass as well. This is a Colgate team that they do leave a little bit of something to be desired with regards to rebound rate. Meanwhile, Otto Landrum has been able to give you about 6 boards per contest for a Boston U team that does rank about 128th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. This is a Colgate team that they do clock in 94th to their credit, but I do think the Boston U going to be able to hold in there after the last time these two teams played. You have to go back to January for that one. It was Colgate who won that game 75-59, but in that game, Colgate you saw go 11 of 26 from 3-point range to 6 of 28 for Boston U. Even though this Boston U team is pretty atrocious with their offense, I do think that they do just enough to hold in there, and I do think that they force more than the 7 Colgate turnovers that we saw the first time around. So did set my line at 6.5. Going to be willing to take the 7 to 7.5 with Boston U, and I do think that this is going to be close enough for late game fouling. Last time around, we saw 134 points up on the board. I think we see something similar. Set my total 134.5. Looking at the over, and I'm going to be willing to take the points with Boston U. 306-509, 306-510. Presbyterian plays those two. Gardner Webb. Gardner Webb is a favorite of 5 points. Your total on this game is 146, and with Gardner Webb, I did set my line at 4, so here at the 5, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Presbyterian. The Blue Hawks have been up and down all season long ever since that win that they achieved against the Vanderbilt Commodores to begin the season. It has been a little bit wobbly, but Samaje Teal has been able to shoot well north of 40% from 3-point range for this unit, and I do think that all in all, this team is going to be able to hold in there against a Gardner Webb team that all of a sudden is well outside the top 180 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. They're just not the same team down low. They've only got one guy that's able to give you north of 4.3 rebounds per game, and that would be Mr. Do-It-All versatile Caleb Robinson, who's been able to give you 14 points, 6 boards, but only shoots about 27.5% from 3. It's a Gardner Webb team that also in a nip and tuck spot odd, they do shoot 64.8% at the free throw line. That's one of the worst marks that you're going to find in all of college basketball. Presbyterian not amazing on the glass, 241st in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate, but it's not like this Gardner-Webb team is what they have been in the past. They're only about 229th with this regard. You've got DQ Nicholas, Julian Sawarmo being able to give you about 24.5 points per contest. Both shoot between 34.5 to 35% from three, but when it comes to this Presbyterian team, Marquise Barnett being able to supply 14.5 points, 2.5 assists per contest is big for a team that they only turn the ball over about 11.5 times per contest. Now, Presbyterian also shoots about 65.5% at the free throw line, but out of their top three scorers, you've got two of them shooting at least 76% at the free throw line to be able to help out there. This team does not necessarily have a lot of size, I'll know, but I do think that you're able to get just enough out of Jonah Pierce being able to give you about 5.5 boards per contest for Presbyterian to be able to hold lively in a pair of games where you've got a Gardner-Webb team that has outscored 74 plus points in each of their last 5 games, and they've also surrendered at least 68 in 4 of those 5. Meanwhile, you've got a Presbyterian team that's sort of been stuck in the mud, scoring 70 points or fewer in 3 out of their last 4 games. I do think that you get a modest amount of scoring here. I did set my line at a 144 with regards to total at 146. I think we've gotten too high with a pair of teams well outside the top 150 with regards to total possessions per game, so diving under, and we'll take the 5 with Presbyterian. 3 of 6, 5-11, 3 of 6, 5-12. Longwood plays us a USC Upstate. Upstate finds themselves as underdogs of 8 points. Your total is between 138.5 and 139. I made Longwood a 10-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Longwood has been pretty ghastly with regards to their offense. They could really benefit from getting some more three-point shooting out of Waylon Napper. That's just something that's not going to happen. Napper has been shooting below 25% from 3, but gives you 14 points, a little bit north of 4 assists per contest. And good news for them is that they go up against a USC Upstate team that's just all sorts of dysfunctional right now. Upstate, one of these slower teams that you're going to find in all of college basketball, but they're 167th in the country with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. They actually do average about 2.3 points more per 100 possessions in a roadside shoot record environment, with Trey Borneau along with Mr. Justin Bailey being able to combine for about 25.5 points per contest, but team only shoots about 33.5% for 3 and 63% the free throw line. They do a nice job of being able to take care of the ball, but Longwood, a top 25 team with regards to rebound rate, should be a lockdown here. It is a Longwood team that has allowing opponents to shoot 35.5% from 3-point range at home, but we've also got a USC Upstate team that has been having their issues giving up the arc, 295th in all of college basketball at that regard. And when you've got a trio of guys for this Longwood team that are able to all give you north of 5.5 rebounds per game, that's big, as you've got a trio in Jonathan Massey, Simon Zavala, along with Michael Christmas, who've been able to combine for about 33 points per contest. Christmas is able to shoot 36% from 3-point range, so it does feel like a lot of Christmas. This Longwood bunch, they're not great at being able to generate turnovers, but they're not too bad. And with USC Upstate being one of the worst teams in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate, other than Amir Langlis, who's able to give you about 7 boards per contest, you really don't have a lot of depth there. I do think that Longwood could be able to get it done with their defense. I did set my total at a 134. I think that USC Upstate gets very much slowed down in this spot against a Longwood team that is pretty slow, pretty controlled, and has been able to do a nice job being able to D up at home all season long. So looking at the under, and with Longwood, did set them as a favorite of 10 points. They're going to be one to lay 8. 306, 513, 306, 514. Navy plays host to Bucknell. Bucknell finds themselves as an underdog of 1.5 points. Totals between 133 and 133.5. I did set Navy as a 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay this number. It's a Navy team that's starting to slip a little bit with their defense, but they've been much better at home rather than in a roadside shoot corner environment. About 140th in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but that improves about 31.5% from 3-point range at home, 34.5% in a roadside shoot corner environment. And for Navy, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they're about 138th in all of college basketball, giving up 13.3 points fewer per 100 possessions when they are at home, going up against a Bucknell team that actually gives up fewer points per possession when they're in a roadside shoot court environment rather than when they are at home. But this is also a Bucknell team that they certainly have been giving up the arc as well. They are outside the top 230 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and Donovan Draper should be the main man for Navy in this one. North of 2 steals, he's able to give you about 10 points, 9 rebounds per game. He is probably the most versatile player in this game, and that's saying something because you've got Noah Williamson, a 7-footer for Bucknell, is able to give you 5 boards, a double-figure amount of points, and then you've also been able to get Mondo production out of Jack Forrest, 16.5 points, 5.5 boards, shooting 38% from 3-point range, but it is a Bucknell team that they're well outside the top 225 with regards to possessions per game, turn the ball over 12.5 times per contest, and outside of Williamson, along with Jack Forrest, it's really been the Elvin Edmonds show, who's been in and out of the fold throughout the season. He's been able to resurface and has been inconsistent recently, to say the least, coming off of 17 points in the team's last game against American. American, he's able to give you about 4.5 assists, about 10 points per contest. But I do think that for Navy, they're going to be able to do a nice job of being able to neutralize that, especially with Asim Benjini. Now, I'll give you 16 points per contest for Navy. They only shoot about 29.5% from three, but they do a nice job being able to take care of the ball. They only turn the ball over about 10 times per contest, while they themselves are one of the best teams in all of college basketball being able to generate turnovers. They've been able to get about 8.1 steals per contest. If you look on in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis at home, the Navy team is in the top 10 in all of college basketball. I do think that those turnovers allows this game to, for one, be very, very grimy, and two, Navy to be able to pull it out. Set my total at a 130.5 looking under, and I'm willing to lay up to a deuce with Navy. 306-515, 306-516. American plays those to Loyola, Maryland. Loyola, Maryland is an underdog of 11 points. Draw on this game is 132 to 133. I did set my total at a 136.5. I'm looking at the over for this American team. They've been able to do a really good job of being able to hype up their offense. They're outside the top 300 with regards to total possessions per game, but they're playing some hair-breaking games right now because they're outside the top 275 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and they're a whopping 333rd in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. This Loyola Maryland team, they are 347th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. So I do think that you get a nice expose of made threes. I'm going to be taking a look at the overhand. With American, I can only set them as 10.5 point favorites. This is an American team that they're really not going to go out there and force a lot of turnovers. They're going to be able to light up a Loyola Maryland defense as not really controlling the arc. You've got Mark Rogers, who stands right around 6'9", give you 16 points, 6.5 boards, shoots 37.5% from three-point range. American as a whole, they shoot 36.5% from three, and they've really cut down on the turnovers. Last season, about 14.5 per contest, down to 11.1 this season with Elijah Stevens, giving you about 5 assists per contest while being able to just really do a nice job taking care of the ball. But both of these teams are going to be very interesting on the glass. American, 95th in all of college basketball. They've got a little bit of an edge, but Loyola Maryland does have Golden DK. He's really the best true low-post presence in this game. He's able to give you about 7 boards per contest, a true rim protector. Meanwhile, you've been able to have Deion Perry be able to supply about 16.5 points per contest for Loyola Maryland. They do need to cut down on the 14.3 turnovers per game, and they do shoot just 64% at the free throw line, but American just not generating a lot of turnovers in general. This is an American team that they've gotten to at least 69 points in now 3 out of their last 4 games. Meanwhile, for Loyola of Maryland, they've been able to do a little bit of a better job with their offense as well. They've given up, though, at least 67 points in each of their last 5 games, so I do think that you get a relatively high-scoring affair. Willing to take 11 plus here with Loyola Maryland, set them as a 10.5 point underdog, and here at the total, looking at the over, set my total more around a 136.5. 306-517, 306-518. Lehigh plays those to Army. Army is an underdog of 7.5 points. Totals between 129.5 and 130 with Army. I did set them as an underdog of 8 points. So here at the 7.5, it's a max I'm willing to lay with Lehigh, but I'm going to be willing to lay with Lehigh. Lehigh's had a little bit of an issue with dealing with the injury to Keith Higgins Jr. He's been out of the fold for each of the last 8 games, but Tyler Whitney Sidney has really stepped up with 15 points per contest for a Lehigh team that they really don't shoot it well from three-point range. They only shoot about 31.5% from distance, and this is an Army team that they've done a good job of being able to shut down the arc, and it's an Army team that does rank in the top 140 nationally in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Army about 168th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and they actually allow a lesser three-point shooting number when they're in a roadside shoot record environment rather than when they are at home. But this is an Army team that they can get exposed down low, allowing opponents to shoot 52.6% from two-point range, and with Don Parolin being able to give this Lehigh team right around about 5.5 rebounds per game. That's been big. You've got Jalen Sinclair, who's out shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range, stepping up, giving the team 9.5 points per contest. He's been another guy that's been in and out of the fold. And for Army, the question becomes, what are they going to be able to get on offense? They're now shooting about 31.5% from three, but still less than 40% from the floor. They're outside the top 275 with regards to total possessions per game, yet they turn the ball over 12.8 times per contest, and they shoot 59% at the free throw line. That is a bottom 5 mark in all of college basketball with regards to our Army. In terms of points scored on a per possession basis, 344th in all of college basketball. They're a bottom 20 team with regards to points scored on a per possession basis when they're away from home. This is a Lehigh team that, no question about it, they are going to be giving up some of their points as well. But that said, this has been a Lehigh team that's been a little bit better defensively recently. They have been pretty ghastly with regards to being able to guard the three-point arc, 348th in all of college basketball. In terms of this, you've been able to get Josh Govins to go off for 12.5 points per contest, but really past that, Army does not have a lot in the backcourt, and this has been a Lehigh team that has been quite a bit improved with regards to their defense. They have now given up 72 points or fewer in each of their last 5 games, and with this Army bunch just stuck with regards to their offense, 56 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. I do think that Lehigh going to be able to persevere over an Army team that they just can't find their shot right now. I did set my total 134. I think that this could be a game close enough for late game following, and Lehigh is a top 75 team with regards to total possessions per game, so loan over and willing to lay up to 7.5 with Lehigh, 3 at 6.5 35-19, 36-5-20. Lafayette is going to be playing us Holy Cross. Holy Cross is an underdog of 10 points. Totals between 131.5 and 132. To semi-total 128.5. Diving under, you got a pair of teams outside the top 250 with regards to total possessions per game, but with Lafayette, going to make them a 6.5 point favorite. With Lafayette, this team has really been able to hit a Herculean run in Patriot League play, which I have no idea how. They had 0 D1 wins going into conference play. They've won 8-2 here in conference. I mean, it makes no sense. They don't have a single guy that gives you north of 9.1 points per contest. That'd be 7-footer Justin Vanderbond, who began his career over at Boston College. You've got a team that shoots 29.5% for three. They really don't take care of the ball, turning it over about 12.5 times per contest. You've been able to have someone like a Devin Hines, Kyle Jenkins, both give you about 8.5 points per contest, but man, this team is really lacking a lot of oomph. Meanwhile, Holy Cross does have that guy. You've got Joe Octave, who's able to give you 15 points, 6 boards, doesn't necessarily shoot a great from three, but this is a Holy Cross team that as a whole, they're shooting about 36% from three-point range. They were dealing with an injury to Bo Montgomery. He's come back in the fold. He's given the team a combined 33 points in the last 2 games, so looks like he's back at full force. This is a Lafayette team that they really don't do a good job of being able to hit the glass either in terms of rebound rate. Lafayette is about 286th in all of college basketball. Not that this Holy Cross team is amazing or anything like that at 322nd, but you've been able to get a little bit more recently out of Joe Nugent, coupled with also Caleb Kenny being able to combine for about 11 boards per contest. I do think that for Holy Cross, they have been a team that's been able to improve as the season has went along, as they've now been able to win 2 straight games in their previous loss. They were able to hold in there to the tune of 6 against Lehigh, as this offense has now been able to get to at least 65 points in each of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, this is a Lafayette team that they're very much holding it down with regards to their defense in regulation. Last time this team gave up north of 70 points in an affair, you have to go all the way back to when they were playing in December. I believe that was the game that they were playing against Quinnipiac just before Christmas. So I do think that you get a little bit of a lower scoring slog, semi-total 128.5, diving under, and we'll take anything north of a touchdown here with Holy Cross. And we wrap things up with 306-521, 306-522. Eastern Kentucky plays us the Florida Gulf Coast. Florida Gulf Coast is an underdog of 9 points. It's on scheme between 143 and 143.5. Eastern Kentucky, I did set as a 7.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points. Both of these teams are horrible with their 3-point shooting percentage defense. For Florida Gulf Coast, they're actually the better of the two at 327th. Eastern Kentucky is a bottom 10 team in all of college basketball in that regard. So I do think that for Florida Gulf Coast, they're going to be able to take advantage of that. You've had Isaiah Thompson just be very inconsistent and very, very banged up in general for Florida Gulf Coast, but when he's been on, he's been able to give you about 13.5 points per contest, shooting 35.5% from being. Dunk City as a whole, they do shoot 35.5% from the outside. And you've got a pair of guys, Zach Anderson, Keyshawn Kellerman, who have been able to combine for about 12 rebounds per game now. You've got the top shot blocker in all of college basketball on the side of Eastern Kentucky. That'd be Isaiah Kozart, 15 points, 9.5 boards, nearly 4 blocks per contest. But even with him doing all that he's doing in terms of being able to block shots, this Florida Gulf Coast team, I don't think that they're going to get completely blown away on the glass. They're about 102nd in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Eastern Kentucky more around 122nd, and this is an Eastern Kentucky team that has some good versatility. Michael Moreno shoots 40% from 3 at 6'6", supplying the team with 9 points per contest. It is a bunch, though, that Eastern Kentucky, they shoot about 68% of the free throw line in a nip and tuck late game fouling situation that could come back to nip them in the butt. And this is a Florida Gulf Coast team that they've honestly looked a little bit better with their defense. 70 points of free surrendered in 4 of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, for Eastern Kentucky, this has been all gas, no breaks for this team. Eastern Kentucky has been able to get to at least 75 points in now 6 straight games, and in all but 1 out of their games within the conference. Meanwhile, you've got a Florida Gulf Coast team that's looking to calm it down a little bit more. I do think that this is a game close enough for late game fouling, and I do think that things are going to be very much hyped up in this game. I think that things could get slowed down, but at the same time, with the way that both of these teams are just giving up the arc, you're going to get a lot of made threes. We'll push this total over, set my total at 147.5, so looking over. And with Florida Gulf Coast, I do think that because they're going to be able to do a good job down low, they're going to hold in this game. So, semi-total 147.5, looking at the over and the points with Dunk City, and that will wrap things up for the Wednesday edition of Coast to Coast Soup, now part of the VSiN family podcast. Big thanks to Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 for joining me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Soup, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, whatever you for this podcast, you do have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GN_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And from there, you're able to fire on whatever you'd like to on this podcast. I have 5-star review coming at you guys every single day throughout the college basketball season, and that means I'm coming at you once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning
in. It's the Smucker's Uncrustables podcast with your host, Uncrustables. Okay, today's guest is rough around the edges. Please welcome Crust.
Thanks for having me.
Today's topic, he's round with soft pillowy bread.
Hey.
Filled with delicious PB&J.
Are you talking about yourself?
And you can take him anywhere.
Why'd you invite?
And we are out of time.
Are you really cutting me off?
Uncrustables are the best part of the sandwich. Sorry, Crust.
The new McCrispy Strip is here. Dip approved by ketchup, tangy barbecue, honey mustard, Sprite, McFlurry, Big Mac sauce, double dipped in buffalo and ranch, more ranch, and creamy chili McCrispy Strip Dip. Now at McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high-quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.